Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Lots of stuff coming up tonight. I mean, lots of stuff. Pastor Arthur Pawlowski is going to join us shortly. So I mentioned this last night. Excited to have him on the program. Lots of things that I'd like to talk to him about. We'll talk about the Solidarity Party, the Alberta election, how things went, what he plans to do with his new party out in Alberta, a party that really, I guess, signals something of a solidarity movement, not just for the province of Alberta, but for all of Canada, I think, in a way. We'll find out more about that. We'll talk about the wildfires, and in a moment, we'll have Brandon Pringle, who ran for the Solidarity Party, join us live here on the program. Brandon will talk about what's going on out in Alberta, not so much as a candidate right now, because the election has passed, and the United Conservative Party of Alberta is in power out there. But he'll join us, I think, as more of an Albertan and give us an account of what's going on in his area with all these Canadian wildfires. We'll show you some live cam footage from places like New York and Boston tonight to show you what the real situation is there with the smoke in the air. There's all kinds of concern about that. We're going to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and this real new momentum that he seems to have suddenly behind his campaign. It's really been kickstarted just within the last 24 hours or so. And Justin Trudeau in Ukraine still with Vladimir Zelensky, and it's like a bromance between these two guys. While Justin drops off another $500 million. So don't go away. I'll be right back. We'll have more right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And I'm back, and joining us live now, direct from Alberta, is Brandon Pringle. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Rick. How are you doing down there? How's the smoke down there?
I don't see any smoke here. I think maybe a week ago I thought I could smell a little bit in the air, but then I think it was just a cool day and someone had a wood burning stove.
Right. Well,
so where I'm at, no, I don't think we're really being impacted in my little isolated area here in southern Ontario. The bigger question is, you're right out there in Alberta. We're hearing all of this concern from both Canada and especially the United States right now about all the smoke. So what's the situation on the ground in Alberta?
Well, for most of us, it's strange. You'd earlier talked about Trudeau being in Ukraine, and making, I know some people wouldn't look at this situation as a comparison to Ukraine, but the reality is that for a lot of us, it just seems like everything's carrying on as normal. But for those up in Edson right now, it's not normal at all. They were just evacuated for the second time.
Right.
One CBC report put the fire at 200,000 hectares. Now, I tried to do some research on that, and that seemed maybe it was acres, not hectares, but still going on the electrical provider website, they showed a number of line poles burned and just about to fall over. So they're kind of holding the line right now for a number of people as far as electricity. But for a lot of us, it just, we see smoke outside, and that's kind of all that seems to be what's happening right now.
So how thick is the smoke? Is it like, just tell me. I just, I see all these pictures in the mainstream media. I see some video. Some of it seems contradictory. I swear some of these images have been photoshopped to make them look worse than they really are, with color filters and by zooming in. Like, I know as a videographer, a professional photographer, because I have training in both of those things in electronic news gathering using ENG camera equipment. If you want to make a small crowd look big, you stand back and you use a zoom lens and you zoom in, and it compresses the area of the image. It makes it look like you have a lot more people. If you want to make a big crowd look small, you stand back and you zoom out full wide with a wide angle lens, and then you end up with less of the critical area in the image. Well,
yes.
I swear that these photographers and videographers are zooming in on, from a distance to get this compressed look at the smoke, and then they're adding color filters or changing what's called the color balance in the cameras to take whatever yellow orangey tint is there and exaggerate that in the end product.
Yes. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, gosh, it's just so constantly, we're just totally barraged by making things bigger than they are. But I mean, Edson, for the people in Edson, they're really feeling it right now.
Of course.
And
yeah. I mean, it's a serious thing, right?
It's only 2 kilometers away, and it's not a small, like, it's not like where I live, which is only 3,000 people. It's almost 10,000 people there.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, here, if I were to just go for a walk, you wouldn't know at all that anything's going on. But as soon as you look a little bit farther on the horizon, it's clearly a ton of smoke.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not, it doesn't affect visibility when you're driving, but it's very much a lot of smoke. So, and it was interesting because, so I was like, okay, well, what can I do to get better prepared for today? So I came across this article that the fires in Nova Scotia, 3 of them have already been, the police have said they were deliberately set.
Okay.
3 of them. So they've raised the fines from $250 roughly for fire starting to $25,000. So hopefully that'll motivate whoever's out there trying to create havoc. And then I have this.
What was the source for that? Was that
that is, oh my gosh, Western Standard.
Okay.
I think it's, yes, Western Standard out of Edmonton.
All right.
And but I think it was reporting for CBC. Yeah, and so then I came across this article here from the Epoch Times, and it quotes a professor saying that actually a lot of the forest fire issues that we're dealing with is not climate change. It's actually poor forest management.
Yep.
And he goes in and says, he quotes Ross McKittrick, an environmental economics professor at the University of Guelph. And the actual research shows the actual opposite of what Trudeau is saying. Now, I'm not going to weigh in on my opinion of whether he's right or wrong or not, but well, Biden is saying the same thing. So take that for what you want.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, that was the government go-to position on this. Finally, was, oh, it's climate change, but we hear that every wildfire season, and this year they're ramping up that rhetoric.
Yes,
but we know as well, because we've heard Trump was actually talking about this very thing when they were having problems with wildfires while he was in office, and he was blaming a lot of it on poor forest management practices because they, in some states, the governors, especially Democrats, they
Yes.
they refuse to deal with, they don't do prescribed burns. They don't clear out dead brush where the wood starts to decay and then dry out, and that creates like basically kindling that can then burn and make these wildfires spread faster and last longer, and it's just a big problem. If you just leave that stuff and don't manage it, it causes problems.
Absolutely. And you're a lot more researched on this than a lot of people. In this article, they go on and talk to Mark Heathcott, a fire expert who managed Parks Canada's controlled burns for more than 20 years.
Yep.
And he told Maclean's that Canada was way behind the United States in terms of controlled fires. In 2023, Parks Canada only scheduled 23 controlled burns, while in 2019 alone, the United States had scheduled 150,000.
Yeah.
So it's they don't want to spend the money, but I think it's so easy. It's funny because even he goes on to say that eco-terrorism is actually a real legitimate threat here, and
Yes.
it actually being exacerbated because by politicians and so-called scientists catastrophizing. Sorry if I'm not saying that word right.
It's okay. That's a
It's
tongue
a big
twister.
word.
Yeah.
Climate change, it's leading people, and this is his quote, these aren't my words, it's leading people to hysteria, giving them so much anxiety that there are people out there that think setting fires during a time when it's going to be dry and windy will lead to saving the planet somehow.
Yes.
And that's a direct quote from the expert, like the science expert. That's not
that's not to say that we know who may or may not have started these fires. They're under investigation, but I do know for a fact that environmental activists have been caught setting fires in the past by doing things like throwing Molotov cocktails from even moving vehicles and from the sides of roads to ignite fires in forested areas. That is an absolute fact. They've been caught doing it in the past, and it's one of the tactics that they use.
Yes, and not only that, but in this article, they actually said that in May, the RCMP laid charges against an Alberta man in connection with a series of intentionally set wildfires from September 2022, as well as setting fire to vehicles, homes, and a church this April.
Yeah.
So that's like 6 weeks ago. So they have evidence of vehicles, homes, and a church. Now, is it a stretch to say, oh, maybe this same guy was setting fires to the bush? I mean,
well, I think that he was charged. I'm not so sure that has anything directly to do with any of this. But, the point is, we do know, because we went through one show here, Brandon, where we looked at all the stats going back, more than 10 years. And just statistically, we know for a fact that 50 to 60% of, well, it's kind of split, right? About half of all the wildfires are set naturally. Somewhere between 50 and 60% are caused by people every single year. And that can be for a variety of reasons. Campfires not extinguished properly, cigarette butts thrown out windows, arson is another reason, a train derailment, overheated brakes on trains, catalytic converters in the exhaust systems of cars that get very hot and maybe set grass on fire if they're parked on grass, a whole variety of different reasons, right? Arson is one of the causes just about every single year. So it's in the mix. We don't know exactly who might have set fires or who might be responsible or what the motivation might be behind any of this. But we do know that the premier is taking action with some sort of an investigation. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, I think that, well, in this article, they touch on it and they say it's led many people to theorize online that many of these fires were the result of arson. And so Daniel Smith announced she's bringing in arson investigators to determine the reason behind 175 wildfires with no known cause. So they're not like, oh, okay, well, we can trace it back to thunder and lightning in the area or something. Like there's no apparent known cause.
Yeah, so they
And
need to investigate to find out. And
yes,
yeah, and I think that she's pushing back on this climate change narrative by saying, wait a minute, let's get real about this and let's investigate. We'll bring in people to like specialists, and they're coming in from outside the province. And I think that's important because that helps bring in some impartiality, some objectivity to the investigations, which I think
yes,
is important in this case, right?
yes. Well, and a total side note, just for a historical fun. I read this article actually. When you talked about catalytic converters, it reminded me of this article about Johnny Cash that was written in Rolling Stone years and years ago. And he was one of the first people in all of history to be legally charged with starting a forest fire.
Johnny
And it was
Cash, I didn't know that.
yes, and it was because of his car. It was leaking oil or something as he was driving across a dry area. It was in Rolling Stone. I should have I wish that I would have you mentioned the catalytic converter, so it just popped into my mind. I wish I would have remembered that before this, because I would have been able to show you the actual article. But yeah, it's the pushing. Well, and it just seems like the government always seems to have this agenda, like that, to distract from, well, we did this wrong, so we don't want to kind of suggest that maybe we could have done something better. So let's blame climate change. Like, no, how about maybe you should do controlled burns? I mean, the controlled burn in Banff, it was reported that it was a whole brand new, all rookies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all training. So I'm not going to say who. I'll let people do their own research on what the trainees were made up of, because I don't want to turn this into a political thing. But the reality is these people were not trained firefighters. And so Banff, of all places, is not a place where you do a controlled burn without experts. I mean, there's never burning there. They've never done anything there. So the underbrush, I used to live in Banff. And actually, my father-in-law's retired RCMP was stationed there for years. And he used to say, if there's ever a fire near Banff, it'll be a miracle if it doesn't take the whole town out. Because the underbrush is just absolutely horrific and nobody wants to try to do anything about it. And then when they do finally say, hey, maybe we should look at this, they put a full rookie team out there. I mean, with the danger level, I mean, it's a miracle they were able to get it under control as quickly as they did, because it had the very real capability of absolutely taking the town of Banff out completely.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing entire communities in jeopardy in many places across Canada, including Alberta, where tonight we still have 77 active wildfires. The ones out of control are these big red ones, and there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 23, 25, 28, 29, 30, 31 that I see on the map. So about 30, 31, 32 out of control. And that the number out of control, I think, is up by 1 or 2 tonight. And the total number, I think, is down by 2. So they're still wrestling with it. That's for sure. And have you seen this, Brandon? I'm going to take this out and show you this story. And then we're going to go to some live cam footage. Oh, yeah, there we go. So actually, there's a photograph of I think is that New York?
Wow.
Yeah, New
Now,
York
if they
Empire
could
State
just
Building.
take those wind turbines that are doing nothing in the middle of Alberta and just point them towards New York to blow that smoke away.
Well, it says plotting revenge on Canada. American backlash over Canadian wildfire smoke makes little sense, expert says. There's a
Yes.
basic explanation for why smoke and air quality over the US is worse than Canada. Well, it's the way it
Yeah.
drifts, but
Yes. That really surprised me that it was that bad in New York. Like, I
well,
don't know.
I'm not so, but this is what I'm saying. Like, I think it depends on how you photograph it. Like, just even these photos alone. Look at the tint on this shot, right?
Right.
Then I'm going to go to the next one. Now look at that.
Right.
Look at the color difference.
Yes.
You tell me, has the,
Well, where
has the
did the
one
sun
this
come
sec,
from
that
all of
one
a
not
sudden?
been manipulated? I say yes.
Right. Yeah.
Also,
Well,
do
where
you
did
see the way these buildings are kind of tilting in at each other? That's
Yeah.
because they're using a specific kind of lens.
Right.
And then I look at this, and again, like, that's not the same color temperature. That's not this. I'm not buying the color.
Well, you could probably do that here. Like, I mean, if I
Yes.
went outside with a certain lens, no, it's definitely not like that at all here.
No,
Like
and I mean,
that.
like,
Not even remotely close to that. Is that Washington, D.C.?
that one is
Washington, yeah.
that's Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh, is it? Oh, they have an obelisk there too.
Oh, and there's a Jeep. Everybody's trying to sell you something.
Yes.
So yeah, they're backlash. They're planning revenge on Canada, and people are tweeting out there, responding, saying things like, "The damn smoke from Canada, wildfire, forest fires, killing us here in New York." But like, look at these photos. I don't know. Did I lose the shot? Well,
No, you can. I mean, that's just terrible. Well, I'm very grateful for Maverick News, Rick, because gosh, like it's just like I can see you gotta spin some things for hysteria, but that's just ridiculous. Like,
so let's go to
people-
Boston. This is a live cam. This is live cam footage from today.
That is more realistic.
Yeah.
That is almost exactly what it looks like here. That's almost a perfect picture of what it's like in Red Deer.
Okay, now let's go to Times Square live. See if I still have it up. Here we go. Here's Times Square.
That looks not, I mean, obviously you can tell there's something in the air, but that actually looks legitimate.
I think that's legitimate too, because that is just a video camera that is always there. They have that rolling all the time. It just set to a regular color balance.
Yes.
Automatically. So it's just giving you natural color, right?
Yeah.
Not manipulated. Yes. It's just, I think that is probably about a 50 millimeter lens. So it just that's very close to what the human eye sees, a 50 millimeter lens on a full frame sensor camera. So I think that's about the equivalent. I'm not seeing, like, if you're using a wide angle, you'll get distortion, like bending of lines on the sides of the image.
Right.
All those lines are basically straight up and down. So that tells me that this is pretty much straight up what the human eye would see if you were standing, right beside that camera.
Well, honestly, looking at this, Rick, and with your expertise, if, as much as we're kind of concerned about these CCTV cameras being everywhere, if we could actually have access to those ourselves, so we could actually see real footage of what's going on in certain places, that'd be very valuable for to promote real news.
Well, yeah, and, so that's what it looks like in Times Square. So, And in no way am I trying to downplay or diminish the severity, the seriousness of these wildfires. Not at all. It's
Yes.
very, very serious. What I'm saying is mainstream media and some social media people too, when it comes to the news, they are looking for ratings and they're looking for clicks. And so
Yeah.
they exaggerate. They always try to scare you to get you to keep on watching. That's what they do. So
Yeah.
they manipulate images. Those are the techniques. I already told you some of the techniques that can be used when you're shooting video to make things
Yeah.
look bigger or smaller, depending on how you want to portray a story. For me as a journalist, it's always been about trying to portray things accurately for people so they get
Yes.
as an accurate perspective. There's no way to give someone 100% pure accurate perspective on something when you're shooting video, because
Yes.
you're in a frame. You're only getting a portion of reality, right? And you're focusing in on a particular area. And we could get into the ethics and, you know, behind all of these things and the technical aspects of it too. But I think you're starting to get the picture, right?
Yes. Well, I'm
That's the
never gonna.
thing that drove me crazy. And I'm sorry, you go ahead. And I just
No,
want to
no, go
mention
ahead,
this.
Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, when I worked in mainstream media, the thing that drove me really nuts, especially in the winter, is every time there was a snowstorm, they always made it out to be, the worst snowstorm ever. And
Yes.
stay home or you will die, right? Stay off the roads, you could die. And,
Yeah.
and sometimes there were really bad snowstorms. Other times they weren't really that bad, but they jacked everybody up because it's in their interest to do that, to
Well,
get people to continue to watch. It builds their ratings. It keeps people engaged for a little while during the news cycle, right? And for me, the media has just cried wolf so many times that I'm always very skeptical now. And that's why I'm showing you the live cam footage versus some of these images that are popping up in newspapers or produced videos that are all edited together. You can see clearly the difference.
yeah.
And
And I'm glad you brought that up because I tell you, there's been a number of times where this hysteria is like, oh, it's so bad. And I've went out there. I grew up in BC, like we're not, and then moved to Alberta. So I've seen every type of storm pretty much. So usually when they're hysterically saying it's the storm of the century, don't go anywhere, I go and I'm like, what's the big deal? And but so the problem though, I found at least on two different occasions was they lie so much that I'm like, they're always making it a catastrophe. And when I went out, it really was that bad.
yeah.
So the government actually does, it's funny, I'm never gonna Naked Communist, everybody needs to watch this. Read this book. I gotta plug that book. But it's like, okay, how did you bring that in here, Brandon? Well, people start to turn off when you keep lying. And in Russia, their government propaganda paper was called Pravda, which is roughly translated truth. And so I think the government should do a better job of actually holding news accountable and maybe, and I don't know how, because the way it's doing now, not working, like Trudeau giving the newspapers 600 million a year isn't working because they just print whatever he wants them to print. So something like, independent people from the community or something that, it's funny because I would really like to be on one of those panels because so often I'm reading these articles and I'm like, that's opinion, that's opinion, that's opinion, that's opinion, that's opinion. It's 75% opinion and 25% maybe facts, maybe spun to their to create crisis, to create clicks. And so you begin to to tune out, and CNN's a great example. Like they just Chris Licht, the guy that they brought on to try to turn things around, and to his credit, he turfed a number of the most egregious fake news purveyors, but he didn't do it enough. I mean, people would think I'm crazy for this, but I think if CNN would have turned around overnight, if they would have just hired Tucker Carlson.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Say, I should get hired at CNN just for having that idea. Did you see how many views that he got on Twitter?
I think it was like 42 million.
Yes,
or something like that, right? Yeah.
And another one was 65 million.
Yeah.
Now his daily views, like Monday to Friday, from Fox were 3.5 to 5 million a day. Now to take that from 5 million an episode to 65 million this episode, like Fox is just destroying their own brand. They've totally bought into woke think, and you heard that here first. So in 20 years from now, when you're trying to figure out who it was that first came out with that saying woke think, you can trace it right back to here today, Maverick News. Just took groupthink and added woke to it, and that's where we're at. And Tucker's really, but I mean, you're just gonna get, Rick, you're gonna get more and more popular, because when people are more connected to saying that you just let people speak their mind and do actual journalism and do your absolute utmost to follow the truth where it leads, not to a to my predetermined arrival. So yes, so support Maverick News out there.
Well,
And
I appreciate that, Brandon. I appreciate the plug. And just to kind of rewind just a little bit, I'm certain. I know, I can tell, and I've just shown you how the mainstream media does it. I know that there is some exaggeration taking place within the mainstream media with regard to these wildfires. I don't think, to me, there's no question. I'm showing you actual evidence of it. That's not to say, though, that if you're in an area and police come around and say, you got to get out of here, or firefighters, because you're in danger. My advice, and you can do what you want, folks, but my advice is don't sit there and think, but that Rick Walker guy says that they're lying to us. No, I would say if they're telling you to leave because you're in danger, you would be well advised to follow their lead and take what you can and leave to keep your family safe. Okay. That's not a conspiracy thing. That's very real when they're coming to your house and telling you that. All right.
Yes.
There.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, honestly, too, I'm more of a peacefully fight the man. Like, just because the government says something, I'm just not going to automatically do that.
Yeah.
That's my knee-jerk reaction, because they have a tendency to constantly exaggerate. However, when I went online and I looked at the pictures of the telephone poles burnt and half, typically that's one of their main priorities, is to protect infrastructure, and that's like burned away and falling over. I'm like, okay, yes, for the people in those areas, it's very serious.
Yes.
So absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Good clarification there, Rick.
Yeah. And there are certain political groups, activists, politicians even, who will never let a crisis go to waste, and they are not letting this one go to waste. The climate change activists are out there in full force, taking advantage of this by spreading their narrative. I think for a while too, we saw people on the other side of things trying to discredit government and throw more doubt on government, and I understand that as well. But at the end of the day, just please do whatever you have to do to just stay safe, keep your
Stay
family
safe.
safe.
Yes,
That's the main
absolutely.
thing. And these investigations will be conducted. Hopefully we get to the bottom of what is the root cause of a lot of these. And I'm sure at some point we'll get a clearer picture of the cause of a lot of these fires. Probably not all of them, but
Yes.
some.
Well, I think people need closure. Like,
Mhm.
I like that the premier is doing this. I just
Me
hope
too.
that it doesn't turn into a government spin program.
Yep.
I hope that they do a serious, like they don't try to, they just print the results, and people don't want to watch CNN anymore because they're tired of fake news. That's just give them the truth. We're adults here. We can handle the truth. You don't
That's
have to
right.
protect us from the truth. And you know, the best-selling book of all time says you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yep. And the truth is coming out. And let's listen to a little bit of Tucker's latest video. We'll just a little bit of it to get a little
Yeah,
taste
that's
of
great.
what Tucker is like on Twitter.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. Let's say you wanted to control a country. How would you start? Well, you'd want to make sure you had the complete obedience of everybody inside your borders who was authorized to use deadly force. You would start with the military and then federal law enforcement, then move your way down ultimately to agencies like the IRS. Controlling the guns would be a top priority for you if you ever wanted to go dictatorial, if you wanted to be baby doc. But let's say you had deeper ambitions. Let's say you wanted the power not simply to control people's behavior, but to control how they think, not just their bodies, but their minds, as a god would. In that case, you need to take charge of the society's taboos. A taboo is something that by popular consensus is not allowed. A taboo may not be illegal, but it doesn't need to be. Over time, social prohibitions are more powerful and more enduring than laws. Societies are defined by what they will not permit, as are famously religions. Muslims don't eat pork, neither do Orthodox Jews. Traditional Christians oppose extramarital sex. The Amish avoid electricity, and so on. American society isn't overtly religious, but it's governed by taboos, and it always has been. What's interesting is how fast our taboos are changing. This is not happening organically. What we're allowed to dislike is being dictated to us from above, sometimes by force. Until fairly recently, for example, it was taboo in this country to attack people on the basis of their race. That was the main lesson of the Second World War, we were told again and again. The one thing we learned from the Nazis is that it's dangerous to reduce human beings to their genetic code. There is no master race. That made sense, but apparently we no longer believe it. Punishing people based on their skin color is not only permitted in modern America, it is mandatory throughout business and government and higher education, as long as the victims are white. At one time, that would have been unimaginable. So with the current behavior of our politicians. As recently as the 1992 presidential campaign, adultery was considered disqualifying for anyone seeking higher office. Bill Clinton was very nearly derailed in the New Hampshire primary by his affair with Jennifer Flowers. Clinton went to elaborate lengths to lie about the relationship because he had no choice. But he was the last presidential candidate who had to meet this standard. By 2008, it was obvious to anybody who was paying attention that Barack Obama had a strange and highly creepy personal life. Yet nobody ever asked him about it. By that point, a leader's behavior within his own marriage, the core relationship of his life, had been declared irrelevant. It was Barack Obama's business, not yours. One by one, with increasing speed, our old taboos have been struck down. Those that remain have lost their moral force. Stealing, flaunting your wealth, striking women, smoking marijuana on the street, shameless public hypocrisy, taking other people's money for not working. All of these things used to be considered unacceptable in America, not anymore. So it probably shouldn't surprise us that the greatest taboo of all is teetering on the edge of acceptability: child molestation. A generation ago, talking to someone else's children about sex was widely considered grounds for a thrashing. Touching them sexually was effectively a death penalty offense. When Jeffrey Dahmer was bludgeoned to death in the bathroom of a Wisconsin prison in 1994, the Milwaukee district attorney had to caution the public not to turn Dahmer's killer into a folk hero. Jeffrey Dahmer had molested and murdered children. People felt justified in celebrating his death. 25 years later, that standard had changed dramatically in the state of Wisconsin, as in the rest of the country. In the summer of 2020, during the BLM riots in Kenosha, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse defended his life from a convicted child molester called Joseph Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum was trying to kill Rittenhouse, so Rittenhouse shot him in self-defense. But it was Joseph Rosenbaum whom the media cast as the victim of the story. Kyle Rittenhouse, meanwhile, an underage boy fending off violence from a child molester, was denounced as the villain. Ultimately, he...
Pretty powerful stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's like I lost. If I was trying to do ticks for truth bombs, I think my pen would have ran out of ink. Oh my gosh! I mean,
yeah,
for him to go onto Twitter, you know, it's Elon Musk is a very interesting case because on one hand, he's developing AI, which a number of legitimate AI pioneers are saying is going to be the doom of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And Elon Musk himself has suggested things like that, but the FDA just gave the green light to one of his Neuralink monkey brain chips
to chip a human being. Yep.
And so, you know, it's like, okay, Brandon, how are you gonna bring communism into this this conversation? But it's actually true because Elon Musk, he started out incredible with SpaceX, and he developed something that the government wanted. He did it under budget. He got a contract from the government. Fantastic. That's the way it should be done. But Tesla's a whole different story because a lot of the value in Tesla is pushed by people that are buying cars that are way out of their price range. They're getting $12,000 rebates for these cars, and it's coming home to Canada because Trudeau's doing the same thing with building, giving Volkswagen a massive, like hundreds of millions of dollars to build this, and that's coming out of our pockets.
13 billion for Volkswagen.
Yeah, and that's
13 billion. Do you know that's half of our national defense budget in Canada to one company just to build batteries.
Yeah, and so that's when I hear the majority of people complaining about capitalism, I have to remind them that no, what you're talking about is when communism infects capitalism. That it's not straight capitalism. So even Bill Gates, okay, who's not the best person on the planet in my opinion, he shorted Tesla stock. When Bill Gates shorts your stock, you got to wonder, what does he know that we don't know? Well, the whole Tesla thing is built on a charade of, oh, everybody wants in. Well, certain people want in, but the taxpayers don't want in. And that business model is not sustainable. So you're going to quickly run out of the people that can afford a $40,000 vehicle plus what it costs to get an extra $12,000 rebate for that vehicle. And the Trudeau government is just pressing the brake, the gas and putting us in debt when, you know, if you are an investor and you want to go to Vegas and roll the dice and see if this works out, then good for you. But please don't bring the taxpayers into that. And
yeah,
so
well, I think you're on the mark there. I think that we are living in a corporatocracy, a form of economic fascism with public-private partnerships now dominating the economic fabric of our countries in Canada, the United States, and indeed throughout Western society. That is the globalist model for economics. And just to kind of try to keep things sort of on track here, just to, again, backpedal a little bit to the Tucker Carlson thing, just wanted to mention that Fox, it looks like they're going to probably pursue litigation against Tucker Carlson, saying he's in breach of contract. Looks like they're going to sue him.
Yep.
See if I
Yeah,
can.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. His lawyer came out absolutely guns blazing against Fox.
Yeah.
Because actually they're trying to censor him is what they're actually trying to do. It's not
because
bad enough.
they sent him a cease and desist letter.
Yes.
So they're not quite to the level of suing him for breach of contract.
Yes.
Collectively, the first two episodes have now generated over 170 million views.
Yeah.
That even surprises me.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, but people are hungry for truth. And, you know, as much as Elon Musk is building Tesla on a communist model, at least he is doing great things for freedom of speech as far as Twitter goes right now. I mean, when Matt Walsh put out What is a Woman, Twitter condemned it as hate speech and tried to shut it down. And so Elon Musk actually pulled the trigger on his own Twitter feed and put What is a Woman out there. So, I mean, you know, he's an interesting cat, that's for sure.
Oh, he is. And, you know, now that Elon owns Twitter, he has become, I think, sort of a focal point, or his Twitter has become a main platform for the presidential race now. And I wanted to draw attention tonight as well to RFK Jr. again. The reason being, I have noticed that just within the last day, RFK Jr. has picked up a bunch of support, endorsements even. And this, speaking of Twitter, here's an endorsement of sorts coming directly from the former CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, which I think is weird, given that Dorsey was, the head of Twitter while they were censoring everyone, including people like RFK Jr., over pandemic talk.
Yeah.
The United States
Listen
that
to
is
this.
focused on peace and ending all these wars, and really focusing on looking at some of the deeper issues that we've had, especially as he states around regulatory capture, the military-industrial complex. He has intimate knowledge of all these things. He's worked extremely hard and tiresome in these fields, and made a lot of progress. I came across him this year, and I really listened, and I kind of went through all of his podcasts, almost every episode, and I appreciate how much of a grasp he has of all the issues he speaks to. I appreciate that he's curious, and I appreciate that he comes at everything from more of a humanitarian angle. Mm-hmm. There's a deep sense of humanity and actually helping people, and there's an edge as well. There's no fear in exploring topics that are a little bit controversial and maybe in the future. So in all, just absolutely refreshing from what I've seen from the whole field.
What the hell is that? This is Mr. Censorship. He was shutting everybody down, kicking people off.
Right?
He had to censor people, yet he's the guy who was allowing all of the crap to go on with it. Started all the Twitter. He had the Twitter files. It was Elon who exposed them and sent them off to Matt Taibbi. And this is the guy behind all the problems to begin with. And now he comes out and he's backing RFK Jr., one of the most vocal critics of the government response to the pandemic, a guy who's been kicked off every social media platform, probably even more than Donald Trump, more censored than Donald Trump. And now this guy comes out and he's like, I like RFK. There's nothing wrong with exploring. What the hell is going on?
Well, I think this is Rick, was my absolute first exposure to this. And my immediate reaction to this is, I think he's had some type of come to Jesus moment.
I hope so. I hope this isn't just something fake.
if you look at well, for those of you who don't know Lord of the Rings, those of you who know Lord of the Rings, when I say worm tongue, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. For those who don't know Lord of the Rings, worm tongue is a really evil advisor that whispers in the ear of the king and deceives him. And what this looks like to me is that when Jack Dorsey was free of the worm tongues, because he didn't have just one, he had a number of his lawyer, his top lawyer, a number of these people were just absolutely, totally wicked and evil. And so they're, and you know, that some people don't have enough personal integrity to do the right thing. Yeah. And so they're easily swayed by other people. And so I think maybe hopefully what's happened with Jack is he's gotten, now that he's not, you know, he doesn't have bad counsel. First of all, he's free of that. He also he's not answering to shareholders anymore, and making decisions based on money is really bad way to run your life. And now he's out of that, and he's not worried about shareholders, and he's not thinking about, well, how this could affect my stock price. I think he's had an opportunity to.
I'm not forgiving him.
No, I agree.
I'm not forgiving the guy. I'm sorry.
I agree. Well, you know, could, you know, yeah, he just came out viciously against the cupcake. You know, that's our special word. Yeah. He came out promoting it in huge fashion. Yes. So, I mean, I think that if he apologizes, that would go a long way. I'm actually literally, when we end this, I'm literally going to a town council meeting where I'm actually going to be having the same discussion with them. And if I'd love to just have, you know, 5 minutes with Trump and say, look, man, I love you for all these reasons, but this is the one time where it would be good if you just admitted that you blew it.
Yeah.
And do I think that he had bad counsel? Do I think he was lied to a lot? Oh, absolutely. But it doesn't matter if you were lied to, because the buck stops with you.
That's right.
You're the president of the United States, and lives are in your hands. And so if you get that, you know, and, you know, going back to Rick, what you're saying about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've got this quote on my phone. Oh no, I put it up to the camera. That would help. He says, it's quite stunning to watch liberals applauding censorship, particularly the muzzling of the bullied mothers of injured children in order to protect pharmaceutical products from criticism. Yeah. Now, if that doesn't perfectly describe Jack Dorsey, I mean, I was just reading an article today about Fox, and they were hardcore trying to muzzle their reporters because of the massive pharmaceutical money.
Yeah, that's right. And yet here they are. Here's Fox basically coming out and endorsing RFK Jr. now. It's the same thing. This is the momentum I'm talking about just within the last 24 hours. So you know what? Trump doesn't, I don't think he needs to worry about DeSantis or Chris Christie or any of the other people challenging him on the Republican side. This is the guy he needs to worry about. Now, I don't know if the Democrat machine will allow him to become the candidate, but just look at this.
Primary challenge to President Biden causing some panic for the White House and Democrats. There's worry that Kennedy's rising profile and decent poll numbers could be stealing some of Biden's re-election thunder. A Democrat strategist thinks the president should, quote, take RFK seriously, Biden. If you don't, we can create a stronger Republican Party that beats us in 2024. Like Bernie did in 2016, RFK has the potential to activate fringe anger if we mock them.
Blah, blah, blah.
And just this week, the Democrat candidate showing up at the border.
This is a humanitarian crisis because of the understanding across the globe that we now have an open border here. There are people being drawn here. They're being abused. There's all kinds of just horrific, terrible, terrible stories. And this is not a good thing for our country. It's not a good thing for these people. And it is
Just within the last day. And watch what Gutfeld says. Hang on a second here. Greg Gutfeld is going to come out here now. And
dare to tread.
Watch this.
Oh,
here,
man,
look
I
at what
love
he
this
says.
story so much. Democrats who call him fringe because moderates are now the fringe. When you listen to his, I wish people would. He rejects the prison of two ideas. He wants to move past the us versus them mentality. Right. This is something that Biden had actually weaponized. He pits people against each other. This guy wants to get away from that. He's persuasive enough to make you revisit your stances. And I know some people, you have to call out the elephant in the room, his voice. You know, how can you win with a voice like that? Well, easy. Because he forces you to listen to him. Think about how Joe Biden sounds so breezy and effervescent and says nonsense, just nonsense. This guy struggles to speak, and every single word he says matters. Democrats shouldn't be jittery. They should be joyful. They should hope Joe Biden steps down and this guy becomes their nominee because he could beat Trump. Trump is a brilliant debater. He's an attack dog. He feeds off anger. Anger is his energy, right? Where is RFK's energy toward Trump? None. Where is RFK's energy toward MAGA, Republicans, supporters? None. He's the opposite of Joe Biden. He actually likes the deplorables. He condemned that word. He understands blue collars where only Joe Biden fakes it. Joe Biden pretends he's his average Joe and he hangs out with steel workers like he's chums with his mechanic or, you know, he knows guy because he knows the name of his driver. RFK is actually the real deal.
Okay, so we got to wrap this portion of the show up quickly. I just want to make a couple of comments. First of all, there is momentum there. Secondly, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, folks. This channel, we are endeavoring to put together a program that will allow us to cover RFK Jr., all of his speeches. But if you want that to happen, you need to support the channel. So you know how to do that. We'll remind you later in the program. But we're putting together a team so that we can cover the entire, just like our, Right Side Broadcasting is covering all the Trump stuff. We're going to attempt to put together the same program on the U.S. side for RFK Jr. so that you get that kind of coverage. Plus, we'll be doing other stuff as well and other candidates. But we want to try to get the streams coming out of there on a regular basis. The thing about the RFK Jr. campaign, though, is he's got momentum. But he's getting it all from the Republican side. He's on right now all the Republican podcasts and live streams. He's generating a lot of numbers, but he needs to win the nomination on the Democrat side. And I'm not sure that this momentum is really, truly helping him. The other challenge he has is that the Democrat Party is not really democratic. It doesn't really matter what the grassroots party members want. At the end of the day, their system is set up so that the party elites really end up choosing the candidate, which we've seen. They went to court over it with Bernie Sanders, and it was ruled that they have every right within their party constitution and their rules to just cook their own nomination process. So I don't know if they're going to allow RFK Jr. to be the nominee, but here's the path to victory that I see for him. I see Joe Biden falling down a few more times. And when he does that, he's probably going to self-destruct before he gets to the finish line. And that just opens the path wide open for RFK Jr. because he's really, at this point, the only other real viable candidate. We have Pastor Arthur waiting in the wings here, Brandon. I'm going to throw it over to you for a final thought on this. Then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to bring Pastor Arthur in. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I would love to see them both go at it. And I'd like to sit them both down and say, just talk to me about what your vision for America is. I don't want to hear one negative, because Trump will lose big time if he goes attacking RFK. Like, he's a very likable guy. Biden is not. So that makes sense. So Trump will turn off a lot of people if he goes into attack mode on RFK.
I agree with that. And honestly, if RFK Jr. runs against Trump, if he gets the nomination and runs, I think Trump's in trouble. I think he really
and
is.
it's a win for everybody.
Yeah,
it's a win for everybody because either guy that gets in is good.
And they'll both end that war in Ukraine. And RFK Jr. is stronger on the pandemic mandates issue, in my opinion. And that is Trump's Achilles heel, and the way that he allowed the states to lock people down and proceed with even vaccine mandates. So there's his Achilles heel right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take a brief break. We'll be right back with Pastor Arthur Pawlowski.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And joining us now is Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, and we'll bring Brandon back into the picture here too. Welcome, sir. It is a privilege to have you on the program tonight. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me in.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you tonight. I have so many questions for you. But first up, the Alberta election is now in the books, and we have a UCP government in the province of Alberta, where you established this new solidarity movement of Alberta. Is that the correct name for the party?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you put that together in short order after, I guess, kind of being kicked out of the leadership of the Independence Party. For people who don't know, that's sort of the little history of it. But within a matter of weeks, you were able to field. How many candidates did you actually field in a short period of time in Alberta?
So I was democratically elected by thousands of people to become the leader of the Independence Party of Alberta. And I joined that party only because we were supposed to have an entity that is a grassroots up. Of course, a few months later, we have become absolutely popular wherever we were showing up. And those 9 members of the board either got bribed or were told to do something, and they kicked me out against the wishes of thousands of people, which was completely a total craziness. So within 9 days, right after the Premier of Alberta, Daniel Smith, dropped the writ, we were able to establish another entity called the Solidarity Movement of Alberta. So we actually did it in 9 days, believe it or not, and we had 49 candidates on a paper and 38 on the ballots.
And that's about half of all the ridings. I think there are 80. How many ridings in the province?
87.
87. That's very fast. And actually, I think you ended up with more candidates running than the Independence Party had. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's right. More than twice. Actually, we were the 4th political party in the province of Alberta that had the biggest number of candidates in the provincial election. And I mean, if I could do that in 9 days, can you imagine what I would do with the political sphere in 4 years? I would turn Alberta into a Saudi Arabia of North America if given the chance.
And when you say turn it into the Saudi Arabia of North America, what do you mean by that? You're referring to the oil industry?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you can tell, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. I hate totalitarianism. I hate police state and any form of dictatorship. I believe in democracy. I believe in republic. I believe in freedom. That's why my father took us out of Poland to Greece and then from Greece to Canada, and not for money, but for freedom. That's the reason we emigrated to this beautiful country of ours called the Dominion of Canada. Saudi Arabia, what I mean is that we are sleeping literally on oil. We have more oil than Saudi Arabia, and we can become the richest, not just the richest province within the Confederation, we can literally become the richest country in the world. We have so much oil, and the energy sector that is under such a heavy attack by the provincial and federal government. It's absolute insanity.
Yes. So here's the final official results, which were released, I think, just within the last few days. Actually, the official numbers, and the only parties that actually did elect people to the House were the New Democratic Party and the United Conservative Party. The Conservatives ended up with 928,000 and change in total votes. The NDP 777,000 and change. So 52.6% of the vote went to the Conservatives, 44% to the NDP, and your party, is that SM, Solidarity Movement, I guess?
That's right.
Okay, so you wound up with 4,664 votes total for 0.3%. And the Independence Party still came away with more votes overall, even though you had candidates in more ridings with just over 12,000 votes, or 0.7%. But even though you didn't get anyone elected to the legislature, you must still feel pretty optimistic and positive about the outcome.
No, you're reading it incorrect. The independent candidates gathered so many votes, but the party itself, it got a lot less if you're looking at the Independence Party of Alberta. But that besides the point. I'll tell you what happened. Even in my own home address, when we went to vote, there were other people assigned to this address. And I've heard many people telling me the same thing, that they were additional so-called residents living in different addresses all across the province of Alberta. Of course, if you know anything about elections or how to rig an election, and that's the way to do it, you just put a random, invisible, non-existing people into actual home addresses, and that's the way to up their numbers. Today, I talked to a person that said that they were comparing. They had the scrutineers right at the riding, and they later compared the numbers, and there was a huge differences between the physical person that was writing it down as it was coming than the official numbers. So we know that we cannot depend anymore on the elections. We know the elections are rigged. Our municipal election was rigged. We have the proof that the election was rigged, but the judge was not interested really in listening to any proof or to even look at any proof. And they used machines as well to count the ballots. I mean, when I've heard that the machines are going to be used, I started to laugh. I mean, it's done before this even starts. So
you're basing this assertion on exit polling, essentially?
Well, here is how it goes. You send scrutineers to different ridings, right, where the votes are being done, and they they mark, how people are voting. So you keep the track.
Well, how do your scrutineers know how people voted?
Well, they know who showed up, how many people showed up to vote, and then they compare in the numbers of the people that...
But you don't know how people vote because people vote by secret ballot.
No, you don't know who they voted for, but you can compare from the lists. I mean, the lists are the biggest things if it comes to elections, and you pretty much know who is on the list of which party.
So you're correlating a voter list of some kind, or what party lists, or like what list are you referring to? Party membership lists, or
You've got party memberships lists. You've got you're doing pollings. You're doing all kinds of different things on issues, and you pretty much know where the people are standing. You look at the lists of different parties, like NDP has its own list. You've got the UCP has its own list. We were working on our own list if it comes to Independence Party as well. And then we are starting to work on our own list.
How were your people at the polls able to determine specifically who it was that was, coming in? By how could they identify these people? A scrutineer, the rules are that the scrutineers are not to interfere. They are simply there to observe. So they're not supposed to talk to people. They're not supposed to approach people. They're not supposed to go up to the voting area. They stand back and observe only. And if they do anything other than that, then the poll supervisor would probably eject them.
Yeah, but they're not just standing only. They have access to see who came to vote. I mean, you're standing over there and you're seeing the list. The list, people's names are being marked, who showed up. That's how you know who is coming, who is not coming. Then you compare to the list of the people that you have identified for the UCP, NDP, etc. But this is not the point. The point is that there was a difference in one polling station of 100 people that were extra, that came to vote extra, and they didn't show up. They never showed up. They were never accounted for up to that moment until later on. So we know that if you combine all the ridings and the stations, the polling stations, and if that happened to all of them, we're talking about tens of thousands of extra votes that someone got it.
Okay, well, so beyond that, how are you feeling about the results and what's happening with the party? Do you think you have forward momentum and things going in the right direction with the party? What do you plan to do with it at this point?
Well, we have a vehicle, right? So we just established a political entity, and now it's the work. I mean, I spent 7 months building the Independence Party of Alberta. We had thousands of people that came to our party. We had 500, 600 people showing up during our town hall meetings. So we had 600 people in Medicine Hat. That's Danielle Smith, the premiers of Alberta riding. We had packed house in High River, packed house in Edmonton, also in Camrose. So we knew that what we were giving people resonated with the people, and someone somewhere decided, okay, they're too dangerous, they're too popular, we need to get this stopped. And that's exactly what happened. So we're going to start all over. We're going to start traveling all over Alberta and build this entity. So for now, right now, we need to build a website, we need to build the membership. I mean, we put this together in 9 days, and we focus on helping the people to end up on the ballot, so we can actually have an entity, a vehicle, a political vehicle. So now it's the bylaws, it's the constitution, is making sure that this entity is actually going to be built on the right foundation. So that's for now. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not right now pushing very hard. I'm giving people a time, a breather, if you will. We spend so much time, vacation is coming for lots of people. So we're going to start doing this in September, October again, like we did last year. And what's ahead? I mean, a shocker for me is that Albertans got so scared of the communists and socialists and the peers, and they actually believed that lie of we cannot split the votes, because if we don't vote for the lesser of two evils, then the big entity is going to eat us alive. And that reminds me of the early 30s in Nazi Germany, where Adolf Hitler with his party said, if you don't vote for the Nazi party, then the communists will take over and it will eat you alive as well. So this very similar scenario, the same thing was used during this election. And my shocker is this: I can't believe that Albertans have elected the very people that were raping them for the past 3 years. I mean, seriously, the very same people that locked them like animals, muzzled them like dogs, did not allow them to see the elderly, destroyed their businesses. We were losing 15 businesses every day in a province of Alberta during the lockdowns. The very people that have done this terrorism, this attack on our rights and freedoms, have been elected again. It's a shocker to me. I don't know. I can only compare this to maybe a Stockholm syndrome, that the very abusers were so dear to them that they needed to see them back in power.
And just to remind people of kind of what you went through personally and how you pushed back, I'm going to run this clip of when they came to your church.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out.
This was during the pandemic.
Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. 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 Out of this property immediately. Out. Immediately go out and don't come back. I don't want to talk to you. Not a word. Out of this property immediately. Out. I don't care what you have to say. Out. Out. Out of this property, you Nazis. Out. Out. Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed. Out. Do you understand English? Get out of this property. Go. So go. Go. And don't come back without the warrant. Out, Nazi. Out. Out. You understand? Nazis are not welcome here. Out. And don't come back without the warrant. Do not come back without the warrant. You understand that? You're not welcome here. Nazis are not welcome here. Gestapo is not welcome here. Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths. Unbelievable, sick, evil people. Intimidating people in a church during the Passover. You Gestapo, Nazi, communists, fascists. Don't you dare coming back here.
Pastor Art, that I can't tell you how emotional I was when I watched that, and that went around the world. It took a huge amount of bravery on your part to push back in that way. And honestly, I have to editorialize here, and I have to say that I think you're absolutely in the right in what you were doing there. And I think there's some validity too in what you're saying when you're pointing out that it was a conservative government just under a different premier, Jason Kenney, who presided over those actions at the time. So now you basically have a lot of the same members of the legislature reelected through another conservative government. You just have a different person at the helm. Do you want to elaborate on that?
100%. I mean, nothing changed. There is about 3,000 of us still under the guns of the court system. There are 4 boys in prison as we speak, being charged with some ridiculous, crazy charges of inciting murder. You got to remember, I was just convicted by this government after I was locked in prison for 50 days in solitary confinement, metal cages, when they kidnapped me from Calgary and took me to a max spot into the jail for the most dangerous terrorists in the country, and then in a psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors or even the knowledge of the agents. I'm talking about this government that destroyed our restaurants, that restaurant owners to this day are fighting in the court system. Our case alone, I was charged over 40 times. I won every single fight except the last one that we're, of course, going to appeal, like the previous one, when the judge gave me a compelled speech judge in this province of Alberta told a free citizen, you must parrot the government if it comes to healthcare, because if you don't, I'll put you back in prison. I mean, this is Soviet Russia, this is North Korea, this is China. That's what happens over there. That's why we escaped this hell of communism to come to Canada, to a free and democratic society. But of course, that's changing. We're talking about the government that lied to us repeatedly. We're talking about the premier that went on television and openly lied so many times, changing story after story after story. We're talking about the government and the members of Legislative Assembly that are still there, that have blood on their hands, that didn't allow people to see their dying elderly passing. They are responsible for the murder of the innocent children. Daniel Smith passed or allowed the AHS to job 6-month young babies right now. We're talking about the government that's implementing 15-minute cities right now. We're talking about the government that wants net zero, not as fast as Trudeau wants, but they want net zero. That means your industry out, your cars out, the planes, everything, your way of life. This is an insanity I've never seen before in a free and democratic society. So to me, there is no difference. So let's just say that Adolf Hitler died in 35 or 37 or 38, just before he invaded Poland. Nothing would change, because the same people were still in power that are responsible for Auschwitz-Birkenau, the final solution, for the destruction of 68 million human beings. It's not just one man responsible. You got to remember, it's an entire machinery behind that one man. Jason Kenney was just one, but he had 86 others, collaborators in this crime. And Danielle Smith comes in. Okay, fine. She gave us promises. Good. Okay. She said that if elected as the leader of the so-called Conservative Party, that she's going to bring amnesty bill, that she's going to bring sovereignty bill, that she is going to protect the unvaccinated, that she is going to bring sanity back into our beloved province. What does this woman do? The pressure comes in, she backpedals. She says, oh, I'm sorry that I said that unvaccinated people are the most persecuted that I have ever seen. I apologize. Then she says that she is not going to use the Sovereignty Act that she passed within an hour because she has the majority government. Then she comes and says, oh, by the way, I'm not going to bring the amnesty bill. I'm just going to let the justice system do their part. Well, listen, it was a politically motivated attack on our freedoms, and the politicians are responsible for fixing it. Casey Madhu, that was the deputy premier under the leadership of Daniel Smith, came on Twitter publicly and said this whole thing had nothing to do with keeping us safe or protecting our lives. It was politically motivated to control us, to control the people. Her own deputy premier said that. We're talking about Tyler Chandra, that was Minister of Justice. He was responsible when he was the Minister of Healthcare, to lock us like animals, to muzzle our children, to destroy lives. We have never seen more suicides than we see right now. We have never seen in the history of this country more overdose on fentanyl and other drugs than we see right now. Mental problems. 40% of Albertans are damaged on antidepressants. This government did this to us, and what do Albertans do? They elect them back in.
And here's a little clip from that famous phone call between yourself, your lawyer, and the new premier, Danielle Smith, talking about this amnesty question with regard specifically to you and your court cases. And this was what Danielle Smith had to say in that conversation.
Once the process is underway, I can ask our prosecutors, is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction? And is it in the public interest? And I assure you, I have asked them that. almost weekly ever since I got started here. There have been a number of cases that have been abandoned at the last minute as they've gone through that assessment. And I'm very hopeful that that will be the case for more cases, but there isn't really a mechanism for me to order them to drop cases. It's complicated that way. It's just the way our legal system works, I'm afraid.
So you felt at that time that she broke her promise to you to do something about amnesty for people who had been charged under the previous conservative government's rules. How did my question here is, first of all, how did the NDP, the main opposition party to the UCP, get a hold of that phone call, which the media says was leaked? And they really seemed to feel like they had a gotcha moment on the premier at that point, because they said that her intervening in any way in this matter, this legal matter, was inappropriate and actually illegal, which technically under the rules, yes, it would be. I don't think that just give me your take on this, because first of all, how did the NDP get that recording?
Well, first of all, let's just back a little bit. This was not my first interaction between the premier's office and myself. Mm-hmm. And the promises were not just for me. This is not about me and my case only. This is about 3,000 other Albertans that are still under the gun of this government if it comes to COVID and mandates and all the restrictions. So we're still in courts, we're still fighting for our lives, and it seems that the rest of the people just moved on. So when Danielle Smith was running for the leadership, there was a number of meetings between the freedom fighters and herself, and the promises were very straightforward. Elect me or help me to get in, and I will make sure that this craziness will cease to exist. I'll fix it. I'll fix it legally, because she has the power to bring amnesty bill. And here is my frustration. People say that she has no power, that there is nothing she can do about it. That's a lie. She can bring amnesty bill. She has the majority government. She can pass a bill that the previous government was wrong, and we are fixing it. Full stop. She has that power. So I am very frustrated when I hear people, there's nothing she can do. She cannot interfere. I'm not talking about her interfering.
And so you're saying not in a specific case, but on a macro scale, on an overarching scale, to apply to the whole population and to anybody, all the people who were caught up in all of that. You're saying that that's appropriate.
That's right. Of course. I mean, NDP in British Columbia is doing this on a regular basis. If it comes to drugs, for example, the Minister of Justice, NDP Minister of Justice in British Columbia, sent a memo, an order actually, to the police, RCMP, and Crown prosecutors saying, do not charge people with small amounts of marijuana or other drugs. So it's perfectly legal, and he did it multiple times. So there is precedence all over Canada that the premiers have those powers to direct her minister. She could direct her minister and fix the problem, and she could bring the amnesty bill. But going back, so what happened this summer, we had I had a conversation with her people, and here's what I was offered. I was offered, if I will not engage in a political realm, I will become the chair for the public inquiry, and I will be given a lot of money, and I will become the chair for this public inquiry against the COVID craziness. Preston Manning got that job because
$250,000, as I recall.
That's right, because I rejected it. I'll tell you why. Not because I wouldn't want to have that job, because it was amazing. The proposition was really good. But I asked them a simple question. If I will find some dirt on you, if I will find that what your people did was illegal or wrong against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, against the Constitution, Criminal Code of Canada. Like those officers entering our church, they broke a Criminal Code of Canada section 176, 1, 2, and 3, and they are supposed to be liable up to 2 years of imprisonment themselves for what they did. But of course, law we have thrown out the window. Now it's lawlessness. Is what the politicians say becomes the law. What the health inspectors say becomes the law. So I rejected it because I was told by Danielle Smith people that if I find something, I will not be able to do anything. I'll have to give it to them. They will handle it. So I said, you want me to be a proxy figure, a fancy title and office without any teeth, without any power. So I'm not interested to be your puppet. You've got many puppets. I'm not going to be one of them. Anyway, fast forward, I became the leader of the Independence Party. They came back to my home again. And here was the offer. The offer was, if I stop exposing the UCP government, what they've done to people, I would, because I was traveling with experts like Paul Alexander, Hodgkinson, biologists, doctors, real doctors, not Hinsha. Hinsha is not a real doctor, but the real doctors explaining to people what was done to them, they got scared. And because we were so popular, our town halls were packed, they sent me another offer. If I stop talking, then they will get rid of the case. Well, I told them I'm not stopping because people have the right to know. So the case continued.
Did they put this offer in writing, or was it recorded anyplace, or it's just something verbal and kind of behind the scenes?
Yeah, of course, it's politics, right? I have witnesses to the conversations, but don't kid yourself. There was nothing in writing, and like they're not that stupid to bring something like this in writing. But I had people that were listening to the conversations. Then fast forward, and then we've got another meeting that I had with the UCP representatives that came to me again. And here was the offer. If I stop talking about the UCP government, I will receive a guaranteed seat at the legislature. In other words, they will put my name on the ballot where historically they know that I'm going to win. And I was invited to the caucus. I was invited to become part of the machinery of this government. And I said, listen, tell Danielle Smith that in order for us to have any real negotiation, I have to be a free man, because I'm not. I'm facing 10 years of imprisonment, and I'm still under the gun of the justice system that you promised you're going to fix. It's not fixed, and you're just coming with trinkets. You're just trying to bribe me with all those different things. I don't want you to bribe me. I want you to set me free. And not just me, but thousands of other Albertans. Fix what was broken by Jason Kenney. Do what you promise you're going to do. But the only thing that was coming back to me is like, give me time, I'll try to do it. Then you've heard the conversation with her. I'm working on it. But here is a fascinating part of that story, that Danielle Smith was, every single time something was coming out, she was coming with a new version of events. After this phone call, she came with a fourth version of the events. She changed her mind 3 times, and then there was a totally new version of events the 4th time. And I just could not believe it, that there is anyone in a political realm that keeps lying over and over again, and there are absolutely no consequences to those lies. In other words, if you're a politician, you can say whatever you want. It means nothing. You can literally get away with murder, and those people do actually get away with murder. That's your politics in Canada right now. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what they say. If they want to be elected, be sure of it, the machines will help them to get elected.
So again, how did the NDP get a hold of that recording?
So I didn't leak it. I did not send it to anyone. The only people that had access to this recording were lawyers, and only for my own protection. I was told to give it to them, so just in case if the Justice Department, the courts, or the Premier's office would accuse me of saying something that I didn't say. You know how those people are. I was accused by Jason Kenney of inciting murder on police officers. So I don't trust those people, and rightly so. They're pathological liars. They come with, every 5 minutes they change a story just after a coffee break, I guess. The biggest Pinocchios we have on earth are the politicians. So I forwarded it to my lawyers, and that's where the story ends. I was as shocked as everybody else. So, for example, on my birthday, the March 28th, the Independence Party, was told to get rid of me. I don't know how or what was offered to them, but on my birthday, they kicked me out of the party. 9 people against thousands that elected me. The next morning, so March 29th, I got a phone call from a politician, and he says to me, there's a big story coming. There is a press conference, and apparently it's about some kind of a video recording with you and Danielle. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't know. I did not know what happened. And of course, later on, I find out that it was the video that was stored privately on a YouTube channel, which is interesting, was removed by YouTube completely. They shut down the entire channel right after the story, removing my entire video collection, my entire YouTube channel.
So it was uploaded to a YouTube channel that you had?
Yes.
And it was sitting out there in public, because there was a media account of this, which I didn't fully understand what they were saying, but they said it had been up for a while. It had 62 views, and then it was later made, well, they said private, but you're saying the channel was taken down by YouTube.
Yes, the channel is taken down completely, and the video was on private. So what happens was, if I would send you the link, you are with the link, you're the only one that can view the video. No one else can view the video.
Yes.
My channel had thousands of views, so that video probably would have hundreds of thousands of views if I made it public, but I didn't, because that was not my intention. This was a private conversation between 2 leaders of 2 political parties. My only concern was about, are you going to keep your word? You promised. You were elected on those promises. We voted for you because you said you're going to set us free. Are you going to do it? That was the whole thing.
So somebody gave it to the NDP. They either got it from your YouTube channel, or you sent a separate copy to your lawyer. Well, your lawyer was on the call at the time. So there were 3 people on that call: you, your lawyer, and Danielle Smith.
No.
And so no, more?
Actually, no. That was Mordre, Dr. Mordre. He was on the call, and Danielle Smith and myself. The link was only sent to the lawyers, again, because I was advised to record any high-profile conversations while I'm still in a legal limbo of this craziness. Because again, I remember at that time I was still accused of, as the first Canadian ever in the history of this country, of interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. So eco-terrorism, for delivering a speech to the truckers on private property and the farmers, which is absolutely insane.
During the blockade at Coutts.
Then I was charged with inciting mischief. No one ever in the history of Canada has been found guilty on inciting mischief. After this conversation, which I never wanted to release, suddenly I'm found guilty on all the charges. The first Canadian ever in history, I have been found guilty on inciting mischief. No one else ever been found guilty on this. And then I'm an eco-terrorist, according to the judge, because I apparently interfered with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. Well, listen, when I went to Coutts, the roads were open. When I left Coutts, the roads were open. Not once I said to the truckers and the farmers, block the roads. What I said to them, do it peacefully, no guns, no swords. This is a non-compliance solidarity style movement. Refuse to work, paralyze their system by refusal to work, but do it peacefully and stand up for your God and state given rights. That's what I said to those people. But now the judge suddenly says, yeah, you're eco-terrorist. And
when you say eco, you mean economic, not environmental.
No, environmental. That
environmental
law,
terrorist.
That law was drafted by Jason Kenney against the eco-terrorists. So if you're blowing pipes, if you're, that's the law.
I don't understand the connection there at all.
I don't understand either. Actually, I have not found a lawyer yet. And I have talked, and my lawyers, I have two legal teams, criminal and civil, and they said no one understands what happened unless you connect politics. So here is what I believe it happened. The conversation between Danielle was so unpopular for the UCP government and the justice system that they decided to make an example that there is no interference, and the only way they knew how to do it is to find me guilty on the most ridiculous charges that they were. So guilty on 3 counts: eco-terrorism, inciting mischief, breach of probation. Pawlowski, you're a terrorist and you should go to prison.
And you're facing, this is still not, your sentence is still not resolved. Where do you stand with all of this now?
So here's another twist in the story. Months after the judge heard our case, and we thought when we were observing the judge, and remember, that was my 120th court case, so I'm accustomed to seeing and kind of reading how the judges are reacting to the case, and he was looking favorably at us. I mean, it was still a ridiculous case. However, during the verdict, he was completely flipped. It was like a completely different individual. It was everyone that partook in the Coutts and Milk River is terrorists. You all broke the law. Like, wow, what just happened here? We all are standing up for our God and state given rights. Now, a few years later, we know that the jobs are harmful, killing people, and now suddenly we all the bad people. The Crown prosecutor accused me of causing Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages for my speech, 19-minute speech in Coutts. So insanity at the highest level. So what happened? After the verdict, the Crown prosecutor, which is so unethical and really unheard of, he says to the judge, but by the way, I'm withdrawing the charge of eco-terrorism, even though I'm already found guilty. The judge already heard the case, found me guilty. Let's move on into sentencing. Now the Crown says we are withdrawing this charge. So now, as we speak right now, what remains is inciting mischief, which has 10 years of imprisonment attached to it. And again, I'm the first and the only Canadian in the history of this country to be found guilty on inciting mischief and breach of probation. We are to appear before the judge on August 9th, and then they're going to schedule the date for sentencing. So they're dragging, they're moving, they're pushing, they're kicking the can down the road. So I have no idea what is going to happen to me.
And was it a breach of your conditions, your probationary conditions to go to Coutts and speak? Was that a breach?
Well, according to the judge, when you're released from jail, you are to keep peace and be of good behavior. In other words, if you say something that the cop doesn't like, you breached peace and you're not of good behavior. If you, I don't know, think of the dumbest thing, you take your dog out and you do not clean after your dog. Well, you just broke the law. You are not of good behavior. You can be arrested and sent back to prison. So according to the judge, me speaking to the people on private property telling Canadians to stand up and keep standing up for your God and state given rights under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that was a breach of peace, and that was not being of good behavior. Therefore, I'm guilty of that as well, which is a criminal offense because they say so.
Well, because they say that you're breaching your conditions for probation.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I guess with your, that's the one thing I want to talk to you about as well, because you've been arrested so many times. It's almost like you've got it down. They've got it down to a science. You've got it down to a science. It's probably like, hey, Joe, you're here to arrest me again today. They keep coming after you over and over and over again. That being said, like, I've never been arrested, right? And it just, I'm a little perplexed. You must have known that if you went to Coots, that they would come after you, given the history and them targeting you over and over and over again. What was it that compelled you to go? What made you feel like you still had to go there to do that?
Well, a number of things. I have 3 children, and I don't want them to experience what I experienced behind the Iron Curtain, under the boots of the Soviets. That's one thing. Also, another thing is I have been arrested. Most of my arrests were for feeding the homeless, which I still feed. I never stopped feeding the poor, and I'll never stop feeding the poor.
Yeah.
But they kept coming at me. They said that there is a bylaw that says giving free goods and services is prohibited by law. Therefore, you got to stop feeding the poor. Well, I did not. Then I got arrested. I was the first Canadian to be arrested in a modern history for reading the Bible in public. No amplification. I was just there with my church, just 6 people, and I got arrested by 7 police officers, charged criminally. I faced a year of imprisonment for just reading the Bible. There is a war going on Christianity, and I just refused to bow. So when they came to our church, of course, I anticipated that this might end up with just another arrest. But tell me what choice do I had, knowing history and having my background? Do I just crawl and die? Do I allow those people to build concentration camps? Well, I grew up in a city called Knurów when we had a concentration camp. I remember as a kid, I was playing in the bunkers of the SS. You got to remember, I'm a Polish immigrant. I went to Auschwitz, Birkenau many times, dozens of times, and other concentration camps as well. I know what's coming. So, okay, it's very uncomfortable to be arrested. It's very uncomfortable to be before the judges and face all this craziness. But if I don't do it, and if you don't do it, and if other men will not do it, then they have free right. Then they can do whatever they want. At least as a man, as a father, as a pastor, I can say, I will not bow. Do with me as you please, but you will have to do it the hardcore. You want to arrest me? Then you got to drag me from the street. You want to arrest me? You got to drag me from the pulpit. You want to arrest me? You have to drag me through the snow. I'm not going to make it easy for you Nazis. You want to play the Nazi game? Then do it the Nazi style. And the police officers were frustrated with me. They would say, why you do this all the time? And I would say to them, why you are doing this all the time? You know what it takes? I'll tell you what it takes. They could call my lawyer, and they could say there is a warrant for your client's arrest. Can you make sure he turns himself in? Tell me, Rick, what would I do? I'll have no choice but to go with my lawyer to the police station. There was no need for them to invade our churches. There was no need for them to arrest me in the middle of the highway. With my brother David, out of all the people, like, why him? Why they arrested him? Just as a bonus? And then they released him later on? Like, what's wrong with them? They're Nazis. And they act like Nazis. So I said to them, if you want a Nazi style, then do what you're doing. And I'm telling you, every single time, you'll have to drag me through the streets if you want to play this game. Or call my lawyers, arrange with them. I'll turn myself in because I have no choice. Anyway, if there is a warrant, there is a warrant. What are you going to do? Run? Run where? The whole global world is upside down right now. Where I'm going to hide? Everywhere is the same. So I decided to stand up and fight. And here is the story of the Quds, the real story. I have become a little bit like Canada's pastor, they called me, or the freedom pastor. I was attending rallies. I was preaching, speaking. We had 15 to 20,000 people marching every week on the streets of Calgary. I was attending other rallies all over the place. I was flying to different provinces, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, you name it. I was attending those rallies, giving them booster, telling them that there is hope no matter what, telling them that I watched this unfold in 80s in my beloved country, Poland, and solidarity won in the end. So don't lose hope. Stand up against those tyrants. The moment millions of Canadians will say no more, it's over for the tyrants. What are they going to do if you refuse to work for them? So that was the message. And I told them about God. I told them about hope, that there is hope, that God is bigger than all the pharaohs combined together. So when the truck convoy started to roll from British Columbia, they called me and they asked me this, and how you, as a pastor, as a clergyman, tell me how I was to refuse them. Here is what they said. People are losing hope. We would like you to do a series of church services for us when we come to Calgary, and we need food. Can you feed us? Because we know your church is feeding thousands of people. Can you feed us, the truckers, while we are on the way to Ottawa? And I had no hesitation, Rick. I said right away, absolutely. It would be a great honor for me to be part of the truck convoy. And I'm not ashamed of that today, even though I'm facing all those years. I'm telling you, this was a great honor, a great privilege for a man like me to be part of the truck convoy. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. And I'm not going ever to apologize to anyone, judge or no judge, crown prosecutor or the media or the president of the United States. I don't care. I am glad and honored that I was part of the truck convoy. It was a great privilege for a man like me to be part of this history. So I did the church service in Calgary. We fed them. We brought truckloads of food. Truckers took it off. They went to Ottawa. And tell you the truth, I wanted to go to Ottawa. I was ready to buy a ticket to go to Ottawa. I had offers to drive there with truckers, but I decided to stay here because the people needed their pastor here. We had 20,000 people on the streets of Calgary, thousands all over, and then the phone call came from Milk River and Quds. And here is what I was told. Can you come? There is potentially a violence that is going to come. Our CMP is thinking of hurting us. We have children and families. Can you come and do a church service? Maybe this will calm them down. So I packed my stuff. I took my worship leader. I took my son. I took food, and off we went to Milk River. There was thousands of people over there. They were our CMP officers. They barricaded the street. No one was allowed to go in or come out. And that was fine. I was not going around, even though they organized a transport for me. I even had a helicopter. I had a helicopter waiting for me to take me from Milk River to Quds, but I didn't use it. I did a church service, Lord's Supper, Holy Communion. We were singing hymns in minus 25, I think it was or minus 30, extremely cold. Our CMP was videotaping me. They were taking pictures. When I was done in Milk River, guess what I did? I went to the high-ranking RCMP, and I said, I would like to go to Quds. I would like to do the same thing that I did here to Quds. And they said, fine, no problem. They opened the barricade for me. The RCMP, opened the barricade for me, and they let me in. And again, when I went to Quds, the roads were clear. They were open. The traffic was flowing one way and opposite way. No one was blocking anything. When I left after my speech, I did church service. We prayed for people. We had Lord's Supper. We were singing Christian songs, national anthem. We had the dinner.
So just to clarify, the road was open, but down the road at the border, was the border open?
The border was open. The roads were open. The only blockade that there was during that time was the RCMP blockade. The only people that were blocking the roads were the RCMP officers. No one else was blocking anything. It was open. And I have the videos to prove it, but no one cared. The crowd didn't care. The judge didn't care. No one cared because, you see, they want to use me as an example. It fits their narration. And especially with the four boys. I don't know if you were following the news, but the NDP and the mainstream propaganda media machinery, the KGB propaganda, they all were saying that I was inciting people to murder police officers. Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Listen to what I said to the people in Quds 3 times. I told them, no violence, no guns, no swords. This is not a violent uprising. This is uprising for our God and state given rights, but not the violent one. Civil rights movement style, Mahatma Gandhi style, solidarity movement style, non-violence style. But this doesn't sit well with their narration. They needed to create a situation where people, an average Joe, would understand that, okay, good for the cops to shut them down because they were planning to murder human beings, officers of the law. This is insanity. There were no guns. I walked everywhere there. I was taken to the basement and all around. There were no guns. There was not even a talk about anything else. They were afraid that the police is going to beat them. And there were children over there. There were women over there. And that's why they wanted the clergyman to come and calm things down if it comes to any sort of violence. Yes, my speech was passionate. I talked about standing up for our rights. I reminded them about history, but I also reminded them about staying peaceful. Both sides need to stay peaceful. But of course, that didn't fit the narrative of this government. And then the people have chosen, I guess, or the machines have chosen for them to re-elect the same people that did this to us. So now we have still in the province of Alberta thousands of people like me facing absolute craziness in a court system, and 4 men are still in prison for inciting or plotting to murder RCMP officers, which is absolutely ridiculous. Those men have no prior record of any sort. Their fathers, they're business people. Maybe foolishly they texted here that we're going to stand up to the death, whatever, but they were not thinking about hurting another human being, and definitely not plotting against the RCMP to murder them. The guns that they found, they themselves, the RCMP officers, brought to the house. Now we have the recordings. Now we have the proof. People are coming out with the proof, and it turns out it was the RCMP that brought the guns to the house.
So you're saying that there is proof that the RCMP planted those weapons?
Yes. You didn't hear the recording? The woman.
Well, I've heard talk of that, and I know that there was some reference made to it at some sort of a rally at some point that I saw a number of months ago, but I wasn't aware of any definitive proof.
Yeah, there is a recording, a few hours, a recording of RCMP admitting that they planted the guns, and they were laughing about it. Here is how everything.
Has that been made public any place? That recording?
The recording is in the hands of the lawyers.
Okay,
that's what I know. That the recording is in the hands of the lawyers, and they're planning to use it. Again, I have nothing to do with the 4 boys, except I try to advocate for them because what was done to them is criminal. But those are not my lawyers. I have no access to it. I have, telling you, no idea. I know that today there was a big fight in a court in Lethbridge between the lawyers, the judge, and the lawyers for the mainstream media, because the mainstream media were demanding that there would be no public ban on the story. The media wants to cover the story, so they brought lawyers and they're fighting. So that was today in the courts in Lethbridge.
And did they get a decision on a publication ban?
I don't think so. I don't think that the decision has been made yet. But when I was debriefed, it was about 2 hours ago, and they were still debating. They were still talking. So I'm not sure. But the point is this: we know now. Years are passing. Experts are coming across this globe. I mean, not just in Canada. We know what was done to us. Why can't we just move on with our lives? Why can't this government, why can't they just undo the harm that was done to us by them and make things good again? I mean, they have the power to do it. Why they are dragging this for thousands of people? Chris Scott is still in court, and they're bringing, I mean, the whole army of lawyers against.
In fact, just before we move on, I can tell you exactly what happened in court today. A judge has reversed his decision on whether to order a ban prohibiting the publication of information relating to search warrants executed during the protest down at Coots. So during today's hearing in Lethbridge, Calgary lawyer Catherine Bayak was representing one of the four men charged. And let's see what it says here. I'm just checking these notes. And so if he reversed the decision, I guess that means that they will allow the publication of information. Is that correct?
I guess so. It looks like, because they wanted to have the access to that information. So I guess they won. They have what they wanted.
I'm just trying to confirm that. Yeah, it's just because it's coming in and it's fresh. It's not, I just know that they've reversed the decision. So if they reverse the decision, I'm assuming then that there was a publication ban in place, because honestly, in the Canadian court system, a publication ban is almost like routine at this point for just about every case, because they're publication ban happy. They get punch drunk on their publication bans. Makes it difficult to cover court, honestly. So,
and the question is, why? I mean, we all are hearing about transparency and honesty. What do they have to hide to keep putting the bans? Like, why? The public should know what's going on, right?
Yes.
But you're dealing with tyrants. You're dealing with police state. You're dealing with lawbreakers. And don't kid yourself, those politicians are lawbreakers. Those judges are lawbreakers. The Crown prosecutors and AHS workers, they're lawbreakers. They're criminals. And I don't know when the story, how the story is going to end, but we're heading for a deep trouble in this country unless we're going to start doing the right thing by removing those people out of those places of power. And not just that, but going after them. I would like to know, wouldn't you want to know who was writing those speeches for Dina Hinshaw in Alberta?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was flip-flopping. She was talking nonsense. Jason Kenney said in the morning one thing, in the evening totally different thing. I would like to know who was really behind, who is the real power behind those people writing those things, telling them what to say. I remember Jason Kenney, the premier of Alberta, said, "I'll never bring vaccine passports." A few weeks later, he brings vaccine passports. Like obviously it was not them. Obviously someone was pushing the agenda. Someone was either bribing them or blackmailing them. Because they were not the same people. And then with Dina Hinshaw, it's a very interesting twist in the story, because she is sent to British Columbia. She becomes the deputy, health chief, whatever. And then I've heard the newest stuff that she's going to be back in Alberta working with the native people, which is a bigger salary than she had before.
So just to come back to your case in particular, where are you at now? Are you awaiting sentencing? Are you appealing, or where are you at with your case?
Well, I'm still on house arrest, believe it or not, which is what, 14, 15 months later. I am not allowed to leave my home from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. unless I have a special permission from my probation officer. So imagine that. A pastor that was telling people do it peacefully but stand for your rights is on house arrest for over a year now. I spent 50 days imprisoning, 40 some days in isolation, max spot, and then in psych ward, just like the Soviets are doing, just like the North Koreans and Chinese are doing to political dissidents. Now I cannot appeal anything. And I think that's what they wanted. They want me in a limbo, because the only way I can appeal this is after sentencing. But when we went for the sentencing date, the Crown pulled a fast one, saying, but by the way, I'm withdrawing the charge that the judge already found this guy guilty on, which was a shocker. So he took me through the ringer. We wasted over $1 million in legal fees. Okay, over $1 million. They wasted millions of dollars on this case already, taxpayers' money. And then afterwards, he says, oh, by the way, we're withdrawing it because we don't want him to challenge Constitution of this case. So he withdraws the charge, and therefore I'm not allowed to challenge the validity of constitutional arguments right now. And now on August the 9th, we're going to go back over there, and we're going to look for another date for sentencing, which could be months, 2 months, half a year from now. Only after the sentencing, I can appeal the case, not before. So I'm in a limbo, on house arrest, with probation officer, a man that has no criminal record, never been charged with assault or inciting violence of any sorts. I feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary for the past 24 years, and I'm the enemy of the state, number one.
So, I mean, you have a long track record, history, whatever, relationship with the authorities, especially in Calgary. And I've on your website, your church website, this is one of the videos that you have posted. Can you explain what is going on here? This goes all the way back. Like, this is pre-pandemic. This goes to, I think, 2014.
No. Let's wait for the police.
Don't yell. Be quiet.
Let's wait for the cops, the proper authority to settle with those boys.
This is not Communist China or Stalin Russia. Okay?
If I would stop you because I don't like your hat, would you be happy?
Go ahead. Let's see what happens.
Well, there you go. There you go. We did nothing here. We're just passing through. We are passing through. No, she just said we can't. When we went, we did. We did. We went around and she said you cannot.
She clearly said, I heard it. Go
Ask her. We just did that. We just did that over there. She kicked us out because it's private property. Now this is private property? You must be kidding me.
That's okay. Well, why don't I go around and this is public place.
So this is
we're not saying here, we're just passing through, and we have a right to pass through, period.
All right, people. Please step aside so these people can get off. They're not causing problems.
We're standing beside our property so you don't steal it.
Wait, okay, wait.
Let go of the side.
Don't touch it.
Let go, it's private property.
Just second, I have to do something. This is the only thing that bothers you?
I'm going to ask you to...
Listen to me, this is a simple question. Is this the reason that is bothering you? No, you listen to me.
I can't answer.
Is this the reason why you stopped us?
One of a few, sir.
You see, you're a liar. That's the problem.
No.
You know what? Adam, you hold this.
Sure.
Okay, because this is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, and
I'll just go take this. I'll just go with that.
Where are you going?
That's not your business.
Yes, it is.
No, that's not your business where I'm going. I'm passing through.
And to where, though, sir?
That's not your business. That's not your business when I'm going. I'm a free citizen. Am I under arrest? Did I commit a crime?
Do I need to make you under arrest?
Make me under arrest if you want to. Why not?
I'm simply
Because I didn't commit it in the crime, lady. You're breaking the law. You're breaking the Charter of Rights. Let me pass through because I have a right to pass through.
You don't.
Period.
This is private property.
That's. I have a right to be at the LRT station. Period.
I simply asked you to walk. You can't set up here.
You will
sir.
leave
You
now,
cannot
or you'll
set
get a
up
ticket
here.
from me, and I'll escort you out.
Hey! What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing, people? What are you people? No! What are you people doing? Nazis, what are you doing? What are you doing? Call the police! Call the police! Call the police! Call the police! You have no authority to do this. Call the police! Call the police! You have no power over free citizens, you understand that? Call the cops! Call the police! You have no power to do what you're doing. Sir, those people assaulted us. They refused our entry to a public place. What are they doing? What they are doing?
What's that? What are they doing to my friend? He didn't do anything.
What they are doing? Protect the citizen.
Protect him.
You're a police officer. Protect the citizen. Who do you think they are? They have no right to assault us. You are called to protect the rights. You understand that?
I know how to do
so
my
protect.
job. Then calm down.
You do your job.
I know how to do my job.
Then do it. In front of you, they assaulted a citizen.
Mr. McAllister, whoa.
So, what was this about, Arthur?
So, the city of Calgary passed a number of laws prohibiting protests and prohibiting Christian expression. The city of Calgary passed a law that giving free goods and services is prohibited. So you're not allowed to feed the poor. You're not allowed to distribute Bibles or gospel materials. The city of Calgary passed a law that giving printed material is illegal. Now they passed a law that
on like city streets, public property. You mean
public property? Yes.
Period.
So
Anywhere.
Anywhere. It doesn't matter. Public park, sidewalk. If I give you a Bible on a public sidewalk, I just committed a crime. So what we decided to do, of course, I feed the poor. So this is a very passionate subject to me. I decided to stage a number of protests. And I was told I cannot go through a private property by the Calgary Stampede because I was told that's a private. So we decided to go through LRT station to the location we were going because we could not go through a private property. And that's where they were called to stop us. We're just passing through. We're not stopping there. We didn't want to stage anything at the LRT station. You see the stairs over there. Those stairs are leading to an overpass to the location, which was a public location that I had a right to stage a protest. So they stopped us trying to prevent the protest from happening. And that's why, because on the left, on your right, on the left, when you're looking at the video, there is, he's stealing our stuff. This is absolutely insane. On the left, when he was taking this stuff, I was told that we will be charged with trespassing because it's a private property. It owns by Calgary Stampede. I said, okay, fine. Mm-hmm. So I can take my stuff to the public location, but the only way I can do it is I have to walk through the LRT station. And there was no big deal. There was nothing really into the story until we were stopped by the doors. And we were told by the LRT wannabe cops, the peace officers, oh, we cannot pass through. I said, why? We're not staying and we are passing through. We want to go to a different place. We just need to go through it. And end of story. This would not be a scene. This would not be a story whatsoever if they would not try to prevent us from exercising our rights. The story ends, if you fast forward it, that we actually did our protest. The cops actually in this instance helped us. And I had a meeting with a high-ranking police officer just an hour later that explained to us that the LRT officers were in the wrong. They had no authority to stop citizens from just walking through the LRT station. I mean, you see other people walking through it. No one is stopping them. But you see, with my face, with my history with those people, with my last name, everywhere I show up, there is always, it seems, controversy. I'm not looking for one. I just want to be left alone and do my job. So, for example, when I set up feeding of the poor, and that's what triggered my first ticket during the COVID. I was the first Canadian to get a COVID ticket in early of 2020. What I did, I set up tables like I have done for the past, dozen of years. This was my 24th, so that would be 21 years. I'm doing this when the COVID started. I did what I have been doing for years. The same thing, the same modus operandi, if you will. And then the police showed up and they told me I have to pack. I cannot feed the poor. Why? Because we're in the middle of pandemic. I said, well, you people don't make any sense. If we are in the middle of pandemic, then my services are needed more, not less. You're shutting down shelters. You're shutting down soup kitchens. What do you think those people are going to do? They're going to whack your father's head. They're going to break into your grandma's house. They're going to turn into violence and crime. And people need to be fed. You may not like them. They are druggies, alcoholics. They may be violent sometimes. They're homeless. You don't have to like them. I'm not doing this to for people to like them. I'm doing this because they need the necessities of life. Because I prefer to feed them than to send 15 to 20,000 different individuals that are facing homelessness in the streets of Calgary out there to break into garages, into houses, into businesses. If I feed them, at least for this day, they don't have to do that. But I was told, no, we're in the middle of crisis. It's a health issue. You cannot feed them. And I said,
I mean, when I saw that video of you getting arrested in Calgary, feeding the homeless, I honestly, it enraged me at the time. I was just livid. I couldn't believe they were doing that to you. That was the first time I really ever had heard of you, was from that incident.
Yeah, there is a big history with authorities. And believe me, or you don't have to. I mean, it's up to you. I'm not looking for trouble. I'm a very peaceful man. I know that sounds funny when you watch a video, me yelling and screaming. I'm a passionate man. I'm a fighter. I was a martial art expert. I was a teacher. I was a professional boxer. So fight is in me. And if you challenge me, I'll fight you. I'll fight you. I'm not looking for a fight, but if you challenge me, I will fight you. Of course, not physically. I'm not fighting with the police or with those people, but I will use.
But the thing is, though, I mean, you're certainly fearless, and it seems like you repeatedly run straight into the fire, and you keep getting arrested over and over again. Is that part of a strategy, or is it just something that you feel compelled to do for ethical reasons? Why do you keep putting yourself, right there in front where you're really in harm's way yourself?
Well, I think I explained that before. I have only two choices. I can quit. They want me to quit. They told me repeatedly, we don't want you to feed the poor. We don't want you to create lineups. Lineups look bad on the city of Calgary. We want you to stop. So I can stop. And believe me, if I stop, probably my trouble will be over. If I stop feeding the poor and preaching the truth, that probably they will leave me alone so I can die in peace. But I cannot do that. I cannot.
So what's the message do you think it sends to the public when you run up against authorities and they arrest you? Does it show that the government is coercive, authoritarian, even illegitimate? Is it a challenge to their authority, you doing this, or your sovereignty as an individual citizen?
I think it exposes them. I think it shows to those that want to see what's really going on. It shows who those people are. I mean, you've got a police officer, a young police officer. Now you've got lots of police officers here, and they all swore to protect us. I mean, I'm paying their salary. I pay lots of taxes, and I pay their salary for what? So they can abuse me, so they can make up stuff, illegal laws to control the society. No, I want them to protect my rights. That's why I pay them. I want them to uphold the law, the Criminal Code of Canada, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Constitution. And if they're not doing it, then we can just say, well, whatever, we got Nazis and they can do whatever they want. Or we can start opposing them and we can start exposing those people and say, hey, look what they're doing. This is insane. Is that what we want? I mean, you got to remember that Nazi Party didn't started the Second War right away. It took Adolf Hitler 20 years, if you know your history. 20 years he was implementing little by little, death by 1,000 cuts. In 1933, Adolf Hitler is democratically elected as the Chancellor of Germany. And it still took him 6 years to implement his final solution, his plans to murder, almost 70 million people. So everything starts somewhere. I mean, Adolf Hitler didn't just show up one day and says, I want to be, the Nazi leader and I'm going to wipe almost 100 million people. If he did that, the people would say, no way, we're not going to elect you. We're not going to support you. But everything takes time, a little by little, one law at a time. So look, just cops came, they listened to our story, and they figured out, well, what's going on here? I mean, this is insanity. Now we are moving our stuff for the protest, just going through that LRT station to the location that we were told we can do that because I called the police asking them where I can stage a lawful protest, not on private property, but on public. So I had a relationship with high-ranking police. I told them what I'm going to do, and I was stopped by wannabe cops because some city, mayor decided, no, I don't like protests, and I am making them illegal. So now those cops are assisting me into bringing all the stuff that I need for that protest. If you fast forward this, do it, then you will see what the whole thing was all about. It was not a big deal.
Sure, I can do that. So
yeah,
I guess we're here.
You see, those are the woods. That's the cop that I had a relationship with. This is a police officer that I was in communication with before the protest, and then he came to talk to me after. So that was the big deal. Nothing. We are on a public property, on a grass. I have some write-ups over there, a few people, and I'm just sharing with people what is happening.
Well, it's your constitutional right to demonstrate like that on public property, regardless of a bylaw that might have passed. Yes.
So this whole scene, if you will, this yelling and screaming and them assaulting us was absolutely unnecessary if they would just allow us to do what we lawfully were allowed to do, and which is not a big deal. In the end, look, it's just few boards and some write-up on the sheets, and that's it. And some people don't even care to look at it, as you can see those three walking by. No one looked at it, but this guy, look, stealing our stuff, seriously, in a free and democratic society. So that's my beef with those people. Leave me alone.
So I guess you're saying you foresaw even what was coming in 2020 with the pandemic, because this is a full 6 years prior in 2014.
Yes, I warned Canadians. I told them so many times on so many shows and during many sermons, I smell communism and socialism here is some kind of a hybrid. Fascism, communism, and socialism, a combination of things, and you are not seeing it.
So is that why the authorities see you as a threat, because you're exposing them for what I guess as being authoritarians?
100%. I mean, what do they fear the most? They fear someone that is exposing them. The darkness fears the light the most. Who hates the people that speak the truth, is the liars, is the manipulators. They have agenda, they're doing something, and now here is a guy with a loud voice, a man that grew up in a totalitarian regime before. He knows what he's talking about. I don't come as a person that tells you I've read the book. It was a cool book about communism. I lived through hell, back and forth, and I'm telling you, it's hell. You have no rights whatsoever. I saw people beaten by the cops, and there is nothing you can do about it. People are arrested for no reason.
So do you think Canada has, I guess that's why you're calling your party the Solidarity Party, right? Is because it's sort of giving a nod to the solidarity movement that we saw in Poland.
Yes,
yeah,
100%. I see the same repetition of history. You may not see that yet because if you're not vocally opposing them, or maybe if you're not that big of a threat to them, they kind of left you alone. But if you are in the action, in the trenches, if you will, then suddenly you say, oh my God, this is progressing so you see, we're distributing pamphlets, which is illegal. And that's the whole purpose. I did stage that against the bylaw that says you cannot give material to anyone on the streets of Calgary. And I said, oh, you know what? Watch me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the very thing you tell me not to do because your bylaw is illegal. And guess what, Rick? A few years later, I won in a court, and the judge agreed with me at that time.
Of course you would win. It's unconstitutional.
Right? So in the end of the day, I've been vindicated in every court. It takes time. It takes millions of dollars later. But I stood my ground, and I'm standing my ground right now. However, what we observed in the past 3 years, they're upping their game. And it's more scary because now it's no longer you're not allowed to give a pamphlet, you're not allowed to give a Bible, you're not allowed to preach, or you're not allowed to feed the poor. Suddenly now they're after children, they're after elderly. Suddenly your medical information, you have no privacy. Suddenly my body, my choice doesn't exist anymore. It's my body, but your choice. Suddenly everything that they were telling us that we cannot do, they're doing it to us, and there is zero consequences, and there's nothing we can do about it. They've shut down our businesses. They invaded our churches, and they invaded them brutally by fencing our churches, by shutting our doors with chains, by arresting pastors, by putting us in metal cages, just like the Soviets did before. So what's the difference? My use of language, Canadians don't like? Well, get used to it. Because if you don't stop this tyranny now, it will be just a regular thing. Maybe they themselves will not call themselves the UCP government, but the Nazi, Conservative Party of Alberta.
Right. So now you have your party, the Solidarity Movement of Alberta. So where does that take us? You see, when I look at the Independence Party, which you were part of, and I'm assuming that much of the platform from the Independence Party is similar to what the Solidarity Party platform is, but with independence, I think that taps into some Western separatist sentiment, similar to separatist sentiment in Quebec, and that's because of frustration with the way the federal government has treated Alberta, with the energy industry not letting Alberta live up to its potential. Where do you think your political movement ultimately will lead? Is this something where you'd like to maintain Canada as a cohesive sovereign nation, or do you think that ultimately we're looking at some sort of a splitting of the country? Because I know that many people in Alberta, well, no, I don't know how many, but there's been talk like that from various sides for many, many years. And it seems like since the pandemic, there's more talk like that. Where does the Solidarity Party fall into that landscape?
Well, I said to the people under the, banner of the Independence Party, I said to the Albertans that we can have what Quebec has and more. I mean, Quebec is part of the Confederation. I think divorce is a failure. I think separation, complete separation, is a failure. But sometimes there comes a time where even as a pastor, I have to talk to the parties, to the husband and the wife, and I have to advise them or give them counsel that maybe it's better for you to get a divorce because you're killing each other. I mean, obviously you cannot live with each other. You hate each other. You beat each other up. You are sleeping with other women, and you don't care about your wife. So I would advise his wife to perhaps consider a divorce because the guy is a nutcase. So now we're dealing with a rapist. We're dealing with a federal government that doesn't care about Alberta at all. I mean, we are just a useful idiots being robbed and raped since before even the Confederation. If you know the history, Alberta was always treated as a workforce for the Quebecers and the Ontarians. I mean, that's just the history. I'm not making this stuff up.
Yeah,
we
I
were just
understand.
to be
Yes.
workers and bread baskets to provide what those people needed. And I mean, I believe in confederation. I believe in a strong and powerful country. But there comes a time that you have to demand your independence within the marriage as well. The wife has to stand up and say, hey, husband, you cannot rape me. You cannot beat me. You cannot steal from me because if you continue to do that, then I will leave you. I don't want to leave Canada. I love this country. I'm the only one in the entire community here where I live with a Canadian flag in front of my home. To this day, even though this government is doing this to me for so many years, this is my 18th year of fighting with them, I still love this country because this is a beautiful country. The dream was real and was beautiful. It's the people that corrupted the dream. Now we need to remind them what the dream was all about, that this wonderful dominion of Canada. So what Quebec did, it was actually fascinating because they threatened that they're going to leave. And because they threatened, they didn't win anything. They didn't separate it. They've lost twice the referendum, and yet they won everything they wanted. It was brilliant. Really, if you think about it, they lost and they won everything they wanted. So I said to Albertans, hey, we can pool Quebec here in Alberta. We can say, hey, we want what Quebec has. Why do we have to send billions of dollars to Ontario? Do you know Ontario is the richest province within the Confederation? And yet Albertans are giving billions of dollars to Ontario. Like, excuse me, why? We have tens of thousands of homeless people here in our province. We can use the money to save lives and to build homes, affordable homes and families. We can give incentives for people to have children, and we can do a free healthcare, free daycare for the children. We can do with this money so much more. And yet we're giving it to the province that is the richest one, and yet the province that hates us the most. And which I don't understand really. So what I said is we don't have to separate. We can just do what Quebec did. We can have a referendum on independence. And that itself, the referendum itself, will send a message to Ottawa that they will give us what we want, what we need as a province. So I am not advocating for separation. I think that would be a failure. But I am a strong advocate for independence. Every province should be run independently from the federal government.
And
Just
when
like
you
the
say
United
that, I
States.
mean, under our current system, the provinces and the federal government are really supposed to be sort of equal partners, really, with separated areas of jurisdiction with different responsibilities, with some overlap and transfer payments from the feds to the province and so on. But is that what you mean by operating independently, more like in conjunction with, in parallel with your own areas of jurisdiction legally and in terms of responsibilities, like healthcare is sort of a provincial responsibility, but national defense would be a federal responsibility? Is that what you mean? But make sure that it's treated on equal terms?
That's right. That's 100% right. You nail it. Right now, it's pretty much they're all the same. I mean, show me the difference between the federal government, provincial government, and municipal government, because please, I don't see any differences. And the mandates, this craziness of pandemic showed us clearly that they are all one entity, that there is no separation between municipal, provincial, and the federal, that there's no checks and balances between the justice system and the political realm and the mainstream media. You see, mainstream media was supposed to watch all of them and tell the people what's really going on. So they're like the watchdogs, exposing the corruption and making sure that those that are corrupted, those that are liars, are bombarded every single day. The people will hear about them and they would be forced to resign because they would not be able to leave their homes without being yelled at. That's the system, how it's supposed to be working. And it used to 40, 50 years ago. A politician would never dare to flip-flop and lie like Danielle Smith did. She would not dare to do that because that would be a political suicide. She would have to resign the next day. But these days, she's a hero. She's the savior of Alberta, a flip-flopping political pancake, half-baked. It's the savior of Alberta. Why? Because she says so. Then we have no accountability, zero accountability. The court system was supposed to keep us all accountable. No one higher than the other. Politician, police officer, doctor, nurse, teacher, whatever. We're all equal under the law. You break the law, we'll come after you. All of that concept is completely out, is gone. It's not existing anymore. I'll prove it to you. So you've got the main ministers, Jason Copping, the Minister of Health later. You've got Nixon, I call them the Mafia Nixon brothers. I think Jeremy was there. You've got the leader, you've got the Premier, Kenny. You've got Tyler Shandro, which later becomes the Minister of Justice. Partying. They are caught red-handed in a Sky Palace, partying, drinking whiskey, breaking the rules, their own rules and restrictions and the mandates. Well, that happened 2 days after I was dragged from the middle of a highway by the police officers that they sent it to attack me. 2 days later, and I spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete with my brother David. Completely illegal. Completely. You're not allowed to do that to a prisoner, but I spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete. Later on, I learned that they can up their game, and I was taken from my solitary confinement to another cell on concrete every night, no water and no washroom. And when they put me in metal cages, I knew the law is gone from this land. It's the Nazis and the communists together. So you've got those boys breaking the law, caught red-handed, breaking the law. They just arrested pastors for keeping their churches open, just doing their job. Do you think there were any consequences done to them? Do you know that they did not even receive a ticket for breaking the rules, their own restrictions and the mandates? Oh no, they're the elites. They're the pharaohs, you're the slaves. Slaves are slaves, and the elites can do whatever they want. So that's what I was trying to warn Canadians about, that this democracy is not working because there are laws being implemented against democracy, and also there are two sets of laws, one law for me, one law for thee. When that happens, you've got tyranny or police state, and 50,000 communists were ruling over 36 million Poles using the same tactics. 50,000 communists had so much power that they enslaved and destroyed 36 million Polish people until 1980, when those millions decided to be free for the sake of the children, and they took it to the streets under the banner of the solidarity and the cross, because it was a combination between those two things, freedom and faith. I warned Canadians about this. They laughed at me, and there's not many that are laughing now, because look what happened to us in the past 3 years, and they are not stopping. So if there's anyone that was laughing at me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, pay attention to what's coming. Economy is collapsing. Fiat currency is collapsing. You will lose everything. I was talking to a banker, a high ranking, and he said to me that 25% of Canadians are going to lose their homes in a very near future. They just raised the interest rate. We as Canadians pay 55% in taxes. This is insanity. You go to work right now and you pretty much work like a slave for a room, for board and room, roof and food, a bread. That's it. You are effectively have been turned into a slave. So how you fix that? Well, first of all, you need to remove the people in power that did this to you. And you have to replace them with people like you and me, neighbors, just commoners, not career politicians. Then you need to start cleaning the house. You know what is happening in the AHS? We give them $20 billion. Half of Alberta's budget goes to the AHS. We have over,
which is the Alberta Health Service for people who don't know.
And we have over 3,500 supervisors. We have over 120,000 Alberta Health Services workers. They're not doctors, most of them. They're not nurses. They're bureaucrats. They are leeches. They're useless people that are sucking the blood out of our economy, doing nothing. Zero. They're just bureaucrats. This is just Alberta Health Services. Let's talk about the judges. The judges are insane. They're not following the Criminal Code of Canada. They're not following the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All of those documents out the window. It's whatever he interprets for today. And here is an interesting thing. A Supreme Court a few years before would rule this way, now is ruling opposite way. They're contradicting themselves all the time now. One judge will say this, another judge says whatever. I guess depends how much he was puffing in the morning, because it seems that they are not following any rules anymore. It's just a show. It's a gong show. And then you've got Supreme Justice coming out and talking about mandates and vaccines and all of these different things. Like, we've lost checks and balances. We've lost accountability. They all are one. That's what I'm trying to say. They are all one. This is a communist party. And if you don't sing according to the party line, then you will be hammered and destroyed. That's Canada. I don't call Canada anymore Canada. We're living in China, behind the Iron Curtain. And if Canadians will not wake up from this sleepy beauty thing, it's going to bite them and they're going to lose it all. And the elites are not even hiding that agenda. They're coming on social networks and telling you, you will own nothing. You will be eating cockroaches and other bugs, and you will be riding on bicycles, and you will be happy. While at the same time, the same people just went to Davos with over 1,000 private jets. You know that one private jet with one tour, if you will, burns more than I with my SUV my entire life driving. That's insanity, right? The same people that are telling you own nothing, they are the biggest landowners on earth. They were driving SUVs and they were eating Japanese steaks in Davos. But they want you to eat bags. They want you to ride a bicycle in minus 35, and they want you to own nothing and be happy. So if that's what you want, be my guest. I escaped an environment like this where we own nothing. And I'm telling you, as a victim, we were not happy. I was not happy standing in the lineups that you could not see the end of it every week, week after week, week after week. The only thing that people were looking for every day was how I can buy necessities of life. I remember my mom would send me to a bakery every Saturday morning. For one loaf of bread, you couldn't buy two loaves. You had to buy only one loaf of bread. And the lineup, I could not see the end of it. And that was my morning every week, just to buy one loaf of bread. I remember the lineups for 3 days and 3 nights for 1 kilo of coffee that my parents had to stand doing tours. So my father would go to work, my mom would stay, my mom would go and cook for us, and I would come from school and I would, replace her or him. And that was going on for 3 days and 3 nights. just to buy 1 kilo of coffee. If that's what you want, you had a little bit of taste when the toilet was missing. But this is just the beginning. They are attacking our food chains. They're attacking our food supply. Communists are very good in bringing totalitarian regime. When you control the food supply, when you control food, you control the society. That's next. They're going to try to control the food. And you can see everything unfolding in front of our eyes. I mean, this is not even a conspiracy theory anymore. This is just, if you had eyes, you can see it.
So it's because of all these things you're speaking of that I'm seeing it manifest. I'm sure I'm seeing, this is why I'm seeing things like the Buffalo Declaration, which is coming out of the Mark Friesen party, the Buffalo Party, the Niagara Declaration, which has been signed by, I don't know how many different churches. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But I mean, these are declarations where people are basically saying through these documents, first of all, that our rights come from God and that the government really has no jurisdiction when it comes to certain inalienable rights.
That's right.
That being said, I think that's maybe why the government feels so threatened, and they see you as a threat because you have become an immovable political force, willing to put it all on the line and not yield, even in the face of police coming and arresting you repeatedly while you take a stand on this moral high ground. Is that a fair assessment?
100%. And I blame the police officers on this, because think about it. If the armed forces, if the agents of the state, if you will, if the police officers would not break the law because they were breaking the law through the 3 years of craziness, if they would refuse to do that, it would be over for those few politicians. I mean, we're dealing with sometimes a handful of people that are making those decisions. Like, for example, Judy Gondek, that crazy woman, that pathological tyrant of Calgary. They're calling her the witch of the West now. Judy Gondek, she was very unknown. No one knew who she was. I mean, no one heard her name, and suddenly she wins with majority in every riding. She wins like she is the queen of the West. And then the first thing she does, she passes the law prohibiting protests. So, like, excuse me, seriously? Are we in China suddenly? And that's not the sad part, that the politicians are crazy. We know that politicians are pathological liars and evil people. We know that. But that the police officers that swore to uphold the law enforce that law, that's crazy. Because if the police would say, listen, Mayor, this is unconstitutional. This is illegal. I'm not going to enforce this because this is crazy. We're not in Russia. We're not in Saudi Arabia. We're not in North Korea, lady. I think you missed the boat. If you want to have a totalitarian regime, we buy you a ticket to China. Go over there and enjoy it. This is Calgary, Alberta. This is democracy. We have laws in place that protect people. But that was not the case. Police arrested people for simply protesting. I was arrested multiple times for simply showing up at the protest. I was not even speaking at the protest. I was just there, and I was arrested and thrown in prison for attending a protest that Judy Gondek deemed illegal, according to her and her Nazi party. So now imagine officers saying, we're not going to enforce this. It would be over. It would be a game over for those wannabe tyrants, and Albertans, Canadians, will have their freedoms back. But because it seems everyone is chasing after the silver coin or a bowl of soup, I was told by the police, well, what do you want from us? You're yelling at us and you're calling us names, but we have a mortgage to pay. We have children as well. And we need our pension. We need our paycheck. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm what? I don't have children. I don't need a paycheck. I'm different than you. So you're okay of, being a Nazi, throwing the Jews, the modern day Jews, into the concentration camp just because you get a pension. Wow, you're a good man. Good for you. You have lost your humanity completely. I
But
remember
ultimately, the core of this, the problem is a shift in ideology, where and the removal of God, I think, from our political system, because when you're dealing with communists or maybe even fascists, or a communo-fascistic system where they've removed God from the equation, then they no longer recognize that rights come from a higher place. Their view would be, and I think is, that it's the government that gives us our rights. And while there is some justification in limiting rights through community standards being imposed, for instance, I don't have the right to just kill someone. So there are laws that are imposed collectively as a society where we limit people's rights and we have laws. Certain rights are inalienable, and it's our government not recognizing those things anymore, because if you don't believe that there is a God, then I guess you don't have to respect that those rights come from a higher place. You think that they're given to us by humans, by other people, by politicians, by our rulers. Is that pretty fair?
Yes, and there is more to that, because if there is no God, therefore there is zero accountability. I mean, then you dictate what is right, what is
They
wrong,
dictate what morals are.
right? What is good, what is evil. I mean, who says that? In Saudi Arabia, they're throwing people off the buildings just because they're homosexuals. Is that a good law? Is that a bad law? Like, who decides that? I mean, you or me, right? You should not feed the poor. Well, who decides that? Well, obviously not the poor, because they don't have lawyers. They don't have power to say anything. They're the victims by their own doing, or victims of circumstances. Whatever it is, they need food. So who decides who can feed the poor, or who decides who can feed the dying child on the street? I mean, in Calgary, if you give a sandwich to a dying child on the streets, you just broke the law. It's in the books. I was charged with that multiple times. Those are the laws. Who makes them? Who decides them? I mean, those people do whatever they want, and they feel that they are not accountable to anyone, because if there is no God, there is no real justice. There is no real consequence in the end. I can take whatever I want to take now and move on without consequences. When there is God, one day you're going to die. I mean, everyone, and that's a beautiful thing about this life. I mean, as much as I don't like that, it makes us all equal in the end. We are all going to die. You can't take your titles, you can't take your money, your mansions, your cars, your planes, your Japanese steaks with you when you're dead. And you will face the judge of judges that doesn't take any bribes. So that's what gives me comfort, that those people one day will face the giver of life, the just God, the holy God, that will make them accountable for what they have said, for what they have done to other human beings. So if there is no God, there are no standards. There are no moral standards whatsoever. There's no justice. There is no right or wrong. It's how you feel. I mean, right now, this mayor passed a law that you cannot legally oppose transgender and homosexuals because she says so. Like, who is she to dictate to another human being that I cannot voice my opinion about something that I disagree with? Well, she passed a law prohibiting me to disagree with something, but by doing it, she's disagreeing with me. So she breaks the same law. But because she's a tyrant and she feels she is not accountable to anyone and she can do whatever she wants, that's why she can literally get away with murder. That's the problem. That's lawlessness. And what I'm trying to say is that we are no longer living in a free and democratic society. We're living in a police state. We are living in a totalitarian regime. This is what it is. We are living in a regime. And some people may disagree because maybe if you're minding your own business, you're going to work like a proper slave, and then you come back, you don't ruffle any feathers, you don't speak, you don't do anything, then maybe they left you alone because you're a useful idiot. That's it. Stalin was calling those types of people useful idiots. You're just part of the machinery, and no one cares about that. No one cares if you live or die. But when you decide to speak up and to stand up for those that have no voice, like the homeless people, I was called street advocate by mainstream media years ago because I had my TV show and I had my radio, and I was advocating for the rights of the poor. At that time, police officers were abusing their power, beating them up, even murdering, confiscating their stuff. And I witnessed, and I had many testimonies coming to me. So I started to speak about that. And they started to call me street advocate because I was advocating for their rights. And I said to the police and to the mayor and to the councillors that they are also humans with rights. You may not like them. You may not like how they look. You may not like how they smell. I get that. I work with them every day. They're sometimes not very likable people. I get that. But they're humans and they have rights. You must respect them, or you are the lawbreaker. And of course, they don't like that kind of a talk because I'm bringing accountability to their lawlessness. And now we have a nation, including prime minister, that enacted the Emergency Act. And look at the charade that we witnessed, the public inquiry, all of that done by his friend. I mean, it was a mockery of justice. That's what it was. It was just a show. It was a gong show. And he got away. We got away with it without any consequences. Those premiers, they got away with murder. The mayors got away with murder. Those parties should be ditched, all of them. And that's what I said to Canadians and Albertans. Every politician, every single one, I don't care what they did. Maybe they just kept their mouth shut. Every politician that was part of what was done to us, everyone that didn't speak up or stand up, there were some that did. And you know some of them. But those that didn't should be ditched. Do not vote for them. Do not promote them. Do not help them. Remove them from the places of power. But what do the Canadians do? Albertans, they elected them back, all of them, almost all of them, except few exceptions. And I am credited, I guess, to remove some of them because our candidates actually effectively eliminated copying. And Tyler Shandro, the Minister of Justice, Casey Madhu, was eliminated as well. So some of those villains that have blood on their hands were removed from power, but they were replaced by the same snakes under the same banners. So we're in.
So is there a political solution?
Yes, there is, but it will take you and me and millions of others. You see, during the solidarity movement, and I think that's why they fear me so much, because I watched that unfolding every day in front of my very eyes when I was growing up. Solidarity movement was nothing at the beginning, like bunch of few people that came together, and of course they were, talking against the government, the communists, the Russians, and then it grew. It grew bigger and bigger. Within the first year, they got 1 million members. And the Communist Party of Poland got so scared that they outlawed solidarity movement. They just made a law and said, now this movement is illegal. just like that. Protests are illegal. Congregations illegal. Churches illegal. Just like that.
Yep, I remember.
So they outlawed solidarity movement. But guess what? People were so sick and tired of the tyrants that for the sake of the children, it grew within the next 2 years to 3 million strong. From 1 million in 1980 to 3 million in 1983. And from that moment, it was over for the communists. It still took a while. Everything had to be organized and and done in a proper way, because again, this was not a violent uprising, this was not a coup, this was a peaceful non-compliance, and that takes time. It takes actually years. It took 9 years for the Polish people to finally get their freedom. In 1989, Solidarity won, and they elected first president after Germans invaded Poland in 1939. So we elected president, and then the premier, the government was formed, and there was coalitions made, and finally Polish people had free and a democratic election. But that took millions of people to do it. So what I'm saying is, when they started to do that, they were against the only power that there was, a completely controlling power, controlling the military, controlling the media, controlling the police, and they didn't stand a chance. But because the people were sick and tired of slavery, it grew more and more and more.
But in the end, what we got in from Solidarity in Poland was a complete system change from communism to something resembling what we have in Western society now, whatever that is. When I look at Poland today, it resembles very much what we have here in many respects. But is that what you think it's going to take? Is a complete system change in order to correct the problems that we've experienced over the past 3+ years?
Yes, we need a total reset. You see, the elites are talking about reset. I talk about reset as well. We need accountability and checks and balances. How are you going to do that? You have to reform the system. How you reform the system? By going after the villains. So justice demands restitution. The villains that did this to us should be charged. I'm talking about maybe Nuremberg #2 or some kind of a trial against the main characters that broke the law. And I'm not talking about mob style. I'm talking about real courts, real judges, real lawyers, and real evidence being done, just like it was done in Poland. So then what you need to start enacting laws that are prohibiting teachers, for example, to indoctrinate people, or they will lose their jobs. They are hired to teach math. If you are outside of that, you're not doing your job. You're doing something else, and you should be punished for that. If you're hired to teach history, biology, and so on. If it comes to colleges, all of the colleges should be struck down, because they're the problem. They are actually controlling the lawyers, they're controlling the teachers, they're controlling the nurses.
So everything you're talking about is, right now is focused on specific institutions, but on the overall, when you say we need system change, when I've talked to other people about this subject, I say, well, what does that look like? And so what does that look like to you? Does that mean that we sever ties with the monarchy? Do we establish some sort of a republic similar to what republic style government, similar to what they have in the US? Or do we keep the foundations of what has made up the Canadian system since, Confederation, and then reshape some of that? What does that look like to you?
Well, the moment you start talking about cutting the monarchy out or separation, forming a new nation or republic, you lose people, because to them this is just absolutely too crazy and too big. What I'm saying is we can reform the system by bringing checks and balances and accountability. I was running for the past 7 months under the independence banners on anti-corruption force. Like, imagine for a second if we had an entity in the province of Alberta that would be watching politicians, watching judges, watching chief of police, watching police officers for corruption. If, for example, if the judge rules just because he had pizza in the morning and he has a bad day, he's not following the law, he should not be the judge. He should be actually tried within the system, and he should be evaluated if he's even fit to be the judge, because obviously he doesn't know what the whole thing was supposed to be all about.
Well, everything should be, decisions should be based on precedent, which is the foundation of our system, which is founded in many respects. The concept of common law flows all through our system.
But then
on the other side. But please continue.
But then you've got appointed chief of police. I mean, politicians appoint the chief of police, therefore they don't work for you. They work for the politicians. So if a crazy gondek comes and says to the chief, I want you to prosecute and arrest those dissidents that I don't like, well, then they work for her. So they go and they do it. They don't work for the people.
Although technically she's not supposed to do that, but
she does. And then she was caught doing it. And again, zero accountability. No checks and balances here. Now, let's talk about the judges. Judges are being appointed. So again, politicians appoint their own people for their own purposes. Judges should be elected. It's the community that should elect the judges. I want to know who is judging our children, who is judging us. Is this a good person or a bad person? Maybe that's a Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. Who knows? No one knows those people. I don't know who they are. Were they good, bad, evil? No one knows. So election of judges, it's a must. And anti-corruption force, it's a must. If you're caught, for example, if you're caught bribing politicians, and you're a company, like we have a big problem here if it comes to concrete or the roads, of course, it's a big fat mafia. I mean, it's billions of dollars. If you're caught taking bribes, or if you're caught trying to give bribes to the politicians, well, there should be some mechanism that will prohibit you and your company working for the public sector for 10 years or 15 years. There must be some kind of a penalty. And if you're a politician that took the bribe, well, you should resign. You should be forced to resign on a spot and, of course, give up the money that you took. But, I mean, I know politicians all my life. I had a politician that is actually a minister in the province of Alberta that came to me and said he gets bribes. When he was a councillor, he was getting bribes 12 to 15 a day. When he became the minister, he says it's few a week. They're not even hiding. They're not even ashamed of it. I mean, it's part of the business, I guess. That's why would they care about you, Rick? Like, excuse me, who are you? If you don't have millions of dollars and if you're not offering them anything, you're a cockroach that they want others to eat. So you're nothing. You're nobody. That's why they don't care about the common people. That's why career politicians have to go, and they have to be replaced with commoners, with normal people. And I'm not saying uneducated people. I'm not saying just, anyone. I mean, sure, let there be a race. Let the best men win. Let there be some kind of a selection and, debates and all of those different things. But the neighbor, I would like to elect a neighbor, actually a human being that I know from my neighborhood.
Sure.
Right? That I observed for years. Maybe my kids went to school with his kids. Now we have career politicians. They are losers. Majority of them, they're pathetic losers. They can't succeed outside of being leeches on the public system, so they go into politics. They're not smart people. They're not hardworking people. They're losers. Majority of them, they get into the office and they do absolutely nothing. They're bench politicians, as we call them. They're just there, getting their pension and getting their salary. That's it. That's the only thing those people do. For example, my MLA, Malikan, a lawyer, he went into politics just to get a nice pension. That's it. He was not doing nothing, zero. You never heard about the guy for 4 years until the election. And suddenly they're door knocking. The door knocking is a pathetic thing. I know door knocking sometimes they say wins election, but that's because people are easily fooled or manipulated. So think about it. You have elected a representative that didn't care about you for 4 years. Now he wants to be re-elected so he cannot care about you for the next 4 years. And he's door knocking saying to you, I care about you. I love you. You're good. You're awesome. Can you re-elect me so I can go back and not to care about you for the next 4 years? And for whatever reason, it works. And people buy that stuff. I don't get it. Maybe it's because I'm a Polish immigrant and I just don't buy this stuff because I grew up in hell and I know that the government can really be evil against you, that they're not good people. But it works with Canadians. I was told many times, oh, but they door knock. They were door knocking. So what? They want to get back into power so they can forget about you for the next 4 years. You look what they do when they are there. I want them to work for me every day. I've elected them to work for me every day. And if they do not do that, they're useless eaters and they are just leeches on the system. We need to replace them with someone that will actually do the job, do something for us, for the communities. It's a crazy system. I don't know. Sometimes I'm thinking if we would throw a few grenades into the system, maybe if we would rebuild the whole thing from scratch would be better. But however, I'm realistic too, and I know that without a revolution, which I don't want to see, blood on the streets, which I don't want to see, a coup, which I don't want to see, the only way we can actually do something is by trying to elect good people into the system and take over the government and reverse the evil that was done. So, for example, let's say a miracle happened and I'm your premier. Well, first of all, I would go after the supervisors of the supervisors. By doing that, I estimated I would save about $600 million from AHS alone. $600 million. And that would not be even a dent in a healthcare system. I'm not talking about doctors. I'm not talking about nurses. And I would leave a supervisor that is needed, but only those that are needed. You've got a supervisor for every 10 Alberta Health Services workers. That's crazy. It's insane. We're paying bureaucrats. They have $250,000 and up. Some of them got $600,000 each for sucking the blood out of the system. So that's one. Then by electing judges, implementing election of chief police officers, judges, bringing anti-corruption force. We would trim other areas as well, like roads, concrete, public buildings. I don't know if you notice in your city, but here in Calgary, and we noticed this, we actually talked about it a few days ago, it's a never-ending construction. I remember when I came to Canada, I was fascinated by fast everything was done. I would comment on that and I said, look, in Poland, it would take 4 years. But here, they start something, boom, 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 it's done. Now, it takes years. Literally. The same thing, it's taking forever and forever and forever. And it's like never-ending story. I'll tell you why. Because it kicks into the next budget circle. It just keeps pushing because they need to milk this cow. That's what we are. We are cows to them. They need to keep milking and milking and milking. That's why the taxes go up. The services go down because our money is being stolen from us by bureaucracy, by big fat government that is never satisfied. So you trim that. You trim that and you save billions of dollars. You dig the energy sector. That would be one of my first things. I would go back, give incentives to American firms, bring them back from Houston to Calgary. Calgary used to be called the hub of energy. Now it's half empty. I think it should be called the hub of emptiness. Half of the buildings are empty. I will give you incentives to those big firms, come back, we'll give you tax cuts, dig that all out. We're sleeping on trillions upon trillions of dollars. Dig that out for us. And we're all going to be happy and we're all going to make money. Albertans will get incentives the taxes will go down. Like, seriously, in Poland, they had 10% taxes, and the country was surviving, no problem. They were giving no taxes to people that had more than that they had 5 children. If you had 5 children, you were not paying taxes because the government was giving incentives to the children, to the next generation of people. Now, look at us here. We're being taxed to death. We can't afford not to work. We cannot afford not to work. 2 parents have to work just to put kids into school and bring bread on the table. This is slavery. This is slavery. I would cut taxes by digging the energy sector, getting the oil and gas. We would be able to lower the taxes and start giving back to Albertans. Those are our resources, not the Trudeau's resources. He has his own resources in Saudi Arabia, as you know. He has his own company over there. Yeah. This is Albertans' oil. It should go to Albertans. Albertans should benefit from that, but that, of course, doesn't sit well with the globalists, with the elites, because they are stealing from us everything all the time. So anyway, you will have to flip the tables, and I get it. It's extremely difficult. It would take time, but it's doable if Albertans would actually want that.
And can I just get you to speak? It is, the clock is ticking here, and I know it's getting late for you, but could I just get you to address the need to keep this peaceful? Because I do hear rumblings from time to time from people who are out of frustration, say things that maybe they don't really mean or ought not say, but their frustrations are running very high. And can I just get you to address that? Because you've already said it, but maybe it's a point worth repeating.
Well, let's say, and I had those people coming to me as well, offering all kinds of solutions, which are horrible solutions. So let's say you kill someone. Let's say you eliminate 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. Well, you cannot eliminate all of them because we're not in a war. We're not in a civil war. So you're going to just kill few, and then what? You're going to be shot dead by the police or the soldiers or RCMP, and that will be over. What have you accomplished? Nothing. You just eliminated few villains, and you left 50,000 villains out there, and those few will be quickly replaced by villains that are just waiting in the queue. That's not how to do it. Look what Mahatma Gandhi did. He didn't raise his fist against those people, and yet he brought the biggest empire to their knees by tactical maneuvers, by paralyzing their system, salt and other things. Look what Martin Luther King Jr. did during the civil rights movement. He paralyzed their system. He was able to shift the focus onto a real problem, and he succeeded in the end. And we just had Black president of the United States of America, not even born there, from Kenya. I mean, that's another story. Then you've got Solidarity movement, and that's the one that I saw with my own eyes. The Polish people were not fighting. They were not using guns or swords against the police or the soldiers. They simply refused to cooperate. I mean, their power, if you understand what I'm trying to say, their power is you. If you are refusing to give them that power, they're powerless. Full stop. Just don't work for them. Refuse to work for them. And if I had millions of Canadians to say that, this whole tyranny would be over within a few days. Here is a situation. They put mandates, restrictions, all this craziness on us. Imagine 1 million Albertans saying, reverse that or we will not show up to work tomorrow. That's it. The government will call our bluff. The government will say, we don't believe you. We don't believe that you are actually going to do it. Okay, you don't go to work one day. Now they're realizing, okay, we got a problem. Then the second day, then the third day. I tell you, by Friday, all the restrictions and mandates will be reversed, if not sooner, because you effectively paralyze the entire system. That's it. It's over. It's done. There's nothing they can do if you do not comply. That's power, my friends. I think that's why they're afraid of me, because if I would be able to articulate that to Canadians, to people that value freedom, and if they would actually run with that, it would be over for the elites. There is nothing they can do if a million people. So we got 1,300,000 people in the city of Calgary. Imagine 1 million people just taking over downtown. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough army. They don't have enough police. What would they do? Nothing. There is nothing they can do. And that's the beauty about the solidarity movement. When masses took it to the streets, yes, some were shot, some were arrested, but communism collapsed. Hungary did the same thing in Budapest. They took it to the streets. Yes, it was uncomfortable for a while. It was bloody for a while. And then the communists collapsed, and Hungary is one of the freest democracies on earth right now, because some people were willing to pay the price. Remember, you kept asking me why I do what I do, because someone has to show the people that there is a leadership, that there is someone that is willing to show the way, that it can be done. It was done before. And here is the beauty about history. If one man did it yesterday, that means another man can do it tomorrow. If worked for the solidarity people 40 years ago, it can work for us today. We just have to apply the same things. Why reinvent the wheels if we can use the old ones that actually work? Do not work for them. Do not cooperate. When the police was coming to arrest me, I went to my knees. I refused to cooperate. You want to play the Nazi game, then do it the Nazi style. My hands back and do as you please. I'm not going to assist you in doing this great evil. I'm not going to assist you. I'm not going to help you to break the law. You're lawless lawbreakers. You're gangsters in uniform. You're Nazis. You're Gestapo. And I'm not assisting people like you. So they were very frustrated, of course, because they're not used to that. They're used to sheep that are willfully led to a slaughterhouse. They're not used to someone that opposes them. I say to you, oppose them, stand against them, and you will have your country back. And I'm telling you, without them in power, this is going to be, again, the greatest nation on earth. Canada is beautiful, and it can be rich, milk and honey, and free from anyone and for everyone that wants to live in peace. I want to be left alone, but they're not letting me live my life. So what are my choices if not just keep fighting?
Pastor Art, I so appreciate the time you've spent with us this evening. It's been a privilege, and you've cleared up a lot of questions that I've been wanting to ask you for a very long time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
And to you as well. And I hope to have you back on the show again.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
It's been great. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Art will be wrapping up. I'll let the pastor go back to his evening, and I will be right back after this. Don't go away.
Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I hope everybody found that informative and helpful. I certainly did. I'm grateful to Pastor Art for spending his time here this evening. It cleared up a lot of things for me, and I hope it did for you as well. So let's just dip back into the news of the day before we wrap up for the evening. There were a few other stories that I wanted to bring up. Tomorrow, Donald Trump. Looks like there will be protests down in Florida. He's expected to appear before a judge, a federal judge, and they are expecting crowds of anywhere from 5,000 to maybe even 50,000 people tomorrow protesting because of his indictment on this documents issue, or whatever you want to call it. As I've said, I think they are playing with fire. This is so volatile that, again, they are really, the Biden administration, I think, by weaponizing the justice system, they are poking their political opponents in the eye. And they're getting a response tomorrow as Trump prepares to appear before that judge. And you can see the police officers here putting up tape and getting ready to try to control the crowds. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Another volatile situation. My guess is you won't see violence or anything like that tomorrow, but you will see big crowds, big protests, and people have had a belly full of it. I'm seeing also in the mainstream media more propaganda talking about, more Republicans are coming out against Trump because they think he's toast because of this. No. Don't kid yourselves. If you're hearing stories like that, think again, because he's not going anywhere. Even if he goes to jail, he's still running. And the more they push on this, the more pushback they're going to get. It's a law of nature. They can use lawfare against him, but they cannot get around the law of nature. And you will see that for every legal action they take, they will get a lawful reaction from the people in terms of protests or whatever, or however else it manifests itself. They'll get more and more pushback and look for more friction like this as we get closer and closer to the actual next presidential election in 2024. Yesterday, we showed you that highway on I-95 in Philadelphia that collapsed. And it was reported at the time that there were no injuries. And it appears that may not actually be the case. They have now. You see how that all collapsed there? They have now recovered one body, the remains of one human being. The medical examiner for Philadelphia County has confirmed that. They are working on identifying those remains. And while that particular overpass had already been in place something like 10 or 12 years. Apparently, this section of highway was undergoing construction. And it's, and look at the fire there as a result. So yeah, major construction project. I think it's something like, what was the dollar figure on that? Maybe I can find how much they were spending. Substantial though, and it was ongoing work. Tens and tens of millions of dollars anyway. And that bridge had just previously been inspected at one point as part of this whole project, and it had been deemed to be structurally sound. So it is not clear at this point what caused that overpass, or I guess it's a bridge technically, what caused it to collapse. So there was a tanker truck carrying 8,500 gallons, I guess, of gasoline. It tried to move and take a left-hand turn after exiting off one of the off-ramps, lost control through its turn, and then fell onto its side and ruptured its own tank and ignited the fuel. It burned and burned, and that was the fire that you saw right there. And it, I guess there was enough heat from that to structurally compromise the concrete and the steel I-beams of the overpass. So that's the notation that I'm seeing here in what was sent to me, explaining kind of what happened, but I know it's still under investigation, and that's pretty amazing to see that a fire like that can actually cause that bridge to collapse. I think they'll be taking an even closer look at the safety inspection to determine if that bridge actually was as structurally sound as the report made it out to be. Seems to me that a fire like that shouldn't have been enough to cause that whole thing to collapse. But hey, the heat, steel inside the concrete, steel I-beam supporting things, down it comes, I guess. I don't know exactly what the science would be behind that, but normally to cut through steel like that, you need acetylene, man. It needs to be very, very hot. But I suppose gasoline burning in huge volume like that can get pretty hot too, right? Get pretty hot too. So maybe soften it up enough just to cause it to collapse. What else do we have for you this evening that I did not get to touch on previously? Wanted to talk about, I'm not going to talk, I'll save that for tomorrow night. It's not dated material. That had, it's a story about asbestos that I just wanted to draw people's attention to. We already talked about Tucker Carlson. Oh, yes. Here's Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Facebook man. He says it was challenging to censor COVID misinformation during the pandemic because the scientific establishment was quite often wrong during the pandemic, which ultimately undermined public trust. Here, I'm going to run the clip. Hang on. This is, again, like, I can't believe I'm running these clips. Like, we just ran Jack Dorsey endorsing RFK Jr., Mr. Censorship, and here's the other Mr. Censorship. This guy looks like Data from Star Trek to me. So just Mr. Android. Anyway, here we go.
So misinformation, I think, is has been a really tricky one because there are things that are kind of obviously false, right? That are maybe factual, but may not be harmful. So it's like, all right, are you going to censor someone for just being wrong? It's, you know, if there's no kind of harm implication of what they're doing, I think that's there's a bunch of real kind of issues and challenges there. But then I think that there are other places where it is, you just take some of the stuff around COVID earlier on in the pandemic, where there were, you know, real health implications, but there hadn't been time to fully vet a bunch of the scientific assumptions. And, you know, unfortunately, I think a lot of the kind of establishment on that kind of waffled on a bunch of facts and, asked for a bunch of things to be censored that in retrospect ended up being, more debatable or true. And that stuff is really tough, right? And really undermines trust in that. And
I think that these guys, I don't think they fully appreciate how their actions, their decisions, their censorship, I don't think they understand or appreciate how much of an impact that has had on individuals and even society collectively. He's sitting there, he's like so far removed from reality. You can just tell he has no appreciation for what he did to people and the role that he played in the whole circus that we saw destroy lives over the past 3 years. I am appalled. He's speaking about it in such an academic, sterilized sort of way that it's like he realizes that it has impact, but he doesn't have any empathy for the people who are on his platform, for the average person, the citizens, the people in his Facebook community, his customers. In fact, his inventory, because that's what people on Facebook are. If you have a Facebook account, you are inventory. He sells you. He sells your personal data. It's pretty clear that's kind of all that you are. You're like a number, a barcode. And then he sits there and says, well, it was very difficult to take that information and blah, 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 blah. Wow. So detached, insensitive, narcissistic. It's disgusting. And then he just talks about it like, oh, well, I guess we just move on. What about all the people who are deplatformed, all the people who have been repeatedly thrown into Facebook jail or banned off YouTube? Not that he runs YouTube, but I mean, they were all working hand in hand and just taking direction from government. Not really much pushback, except there's pushback now on Bill C-18, isn't there? Because they don't want to pay the news organizations. No, now it's their money in Canada. So Zuckerberg and his minions are saying, no, we're just not going to run any news content then because we don't care and we're not going to pay. All about the money. And they look at what he did to us. It blows my mind. And to see Jack Dorsey sit there tonight and come out and endorse RFK Jr., again, former head of Twitter, saying this, he's going to support a guy who said for 3 years the very things that you went out of your way to have censored off the platform that you were running. And now you want that guy to be the president. I can't wrap my head around it. And even if he's endorsing RFK Jr., I don't forgive him. It just makes him, to me, look like a fool. A thoughtless fool. But the upside is, because both of these guys now, today, isn't it strange how suddenly the tone has changed all within a day? Why do I feel like maybe we're being played? I don't know. Something that seems amiss, but it feels at least like it's going in the right direction. Thank goodness for that. So that's the positive side of it. That's the upside. At least now we seem to have some momentum going in the direction of truth. And hopefully we get there sooner rather than later. And hopefully before the next president is elected and before we elect a new government in Canada and before more people die in Ukraine. And we elect other governments in other countries. I mean, sooner would be much better than later. At least we're seeing some movement. Finally, now. And I mean, the other question is it too late? Because even though these guys are now saying, well, you know, that censorship thing, it maybe was maybe a little heavy-handed. Well, now we have new government initiatives and actual legislation in place to enforce more censorship. And these tools can, will, and are being used by the people in power to target their political opponents. Maybe that's why we're seeing the shift in the rhetoric, because now those CEOs of those huge social media companies can come out and say that they're on the side of the average person, on the side of their inventory, when in fact they don't really care at all. But now they can just point their finger at the government and say, well, they've got these laws. It's up to them, I guess. What can we do? We'll see where this one goes. Something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't smell right. Something doesn't smell right. Again, here, let's go back live now to Boston. Show you what's going on in Boston. Looks pretty beautiful. It looks like there's a little haze or smoke or something in the air there, but still a beautiful night in Boston. Home of the Bruins. Yeah. Also in Ukraine, we're seeing that Zelensky has essentially confirmed that their counteroffensive has now started. He made reference to it a couple of days ago, making reference to it again today. And because it's getting late, I'm not going to run these clips today of Zelensky and Trudeau. But my goodness, what we saw coming out of there, the propaganda and the bromance between Trudeau and Zelensky, it was just stomach turning, to be quite honest. There was a produced video even that they've now they put up online. And I mean, they had cameras on dollies for smooth flowing shots of Trudeau walking out to greet Zelensky. And then they shake hands and then embrace in a big hug, true bromance style. Then they have a sit down meeting. And all of this has been, they shot video of all of it, and it's highly produced, very polished propaganda. Zelensky makes reference to the wildfires and says, get this. He said in this meeting with Trudeau that Ukraine is going to help Canada with the wildfires. No, they're not. They have a war that they're fighting. They have no resources to send to Canada. And if they do, I have to ask, what are you doing with all the resources that we're sending to you to wage war? They're not sending anything substantial here. They won't, to help us fight the wildfires. What a load of propaganda BS that was. That was just him with a talking point. This is Zelensky speaking to Trudeau. Him with the talking point that he was fed, because they knew that Trudeau was being criticized on the home front for going to Ukraine and handing over another $500 million in cash and weapons at a time when the country is literally on fire. People are not happy about it. So they had to have somebody say something about the wildfires, and it's ineffectual if Trudeau says it himself. So they got Zelensky to say it and say, well, thank you for coming. And, we were really concerned about all those wildfires, and we're going to be there for you. We got your back. Justin, and we're going to send help. Help? Dude, you're in the middle of a war that essentially is the center of World War III in whatever form you want to say that it is taken, but it's clearly unfolding. And it's escalating day by day by day. And you just initiated a new counteroffensive against Russia. And you're going to send your firefighters to Canada to fight the wildfire. What a load. But hey, if it makes the people on the neoliberal woke side feel better, that's all that counts, because that's Justin Trudeau's voting base. And at the end of the day, he needs to get reelected to continue the work that he started 8 years ago. And what work is that? Well, let's just get real about this. Why am I even talking about this? Why is he getting more media attention today? Because Justin Trudeau is the poster child for the globalists. He is Klaus Schwab's boy. Canada is the model nation for the whole globalist agenda, isn't it? Clearly is. And Justin Trudeau has been singled out many times in Davos by Klaus himself. He's Klaus's boy. And there he is in Ukraine. And that's why the world media, not the world media maybe, but Western media, NATO media, that's why they're giving him the attention that he gets all the time. That's why Biden loves him too. Trump, not so much. And we'll see where RFK Jr. ends up on all of that too. And there's another story to follow, man, the RFK Jr. thing. Now, I mentioned also earlier that, we're trying to put together a team and a system so that we can actually cover RFK Jr. speeches regularly. So then you'll get, we can already tap into feeds and we can bring you information, and there's lots of coverage of Trump out there, not so much RFK Jr. So we're hoping that we can establish something to do that. In order for us to do that, of course, we're going to need your help, and we need your help regardless anyway, just to keep this show on not just on the road, but just on the internet and broadcasting every day. You can support the show by donating at freedomreporters.com. And you're supporting free speech when you do that, because this is a free speech, free media initiative. freedomreporters.com. You can donate there. Certainly do appreciate the support we've had in the past and the support that I know is still coming from folks. Or you can donate at maverickdonations.com. maverickdonations.com. And that takes you to the Give, Send, Go page, freedomreporters.com, to the PayPal page. You can also contribute through the Rumble rants on the Rumble channel. If you haven't subscribed on Rumble, please consider doing that. We're growing there, and we need all the subscribers we can get. And if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, you can still do that there too. If you do subscribe on our YouTube channels, please don't forget to hit the notification bell. In fact, we have 2 YouTube channels operating tonight, 2 Rumble channels. So if you subscribe on one, maybe you can find the other one too and subscribe on both. Tomorrow night, I'll put the links in the comment section, and that'll help you find those channels so that you can more easily subscribe to them if you are so inclined. And make sure you like, and share. Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. We're on those platforms as well, and Cloud Hub, BitChute. And we're, expanding out into more platforms too, like UGTube, UGETube, and we're on Brighteon as well with a lot of our rebroads. So again, folks, thank you very much for joining us here on the Maverick News Channel tonight. Thank you to Pastor Arthur Pawlowski and to Brandon Pringle, both of whom were great guests tonight. Good show, covered a lot of ground, And I'm glad that we had the pastor on because he did answer a lot of questions that I've been wanting to ask for a long time. So it was very helpful to me, and I hope it was helpful to you as well. I will be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with more antivirus programs for your mind on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.